Welcome everybody to another edition of Hot Program. I am your host with the most from the East Coast, and I am joined by a man who shaved his legs with Occam's razor, a man who has almost no hair below the neck. How you doing today, my one black friend?
I'm pretty well. I have lots of hair here. And it's
that's good. That's the important stuff.
Using that Control GX.
Oh, to fade out the gray.
It's white. My hair turned white. Even on the top of my head is white. So yeah, it does a pretty good job. It takes about a month for me. In my case, it took about a month. But on my beard.
Nah, don't even.
They make a beard one, but I didn't try to use that long enough to see if it was effective. But the one for your hair.
All right, so NEAL from Gustick Informant should be joining us today. But before he does, we're gonna talk about a couple of political stories that have come up. So this first one is interesting to me because it just gets to the detachment that our country has from reality. And sometimes you see this a lot in our community. Somebody came through our chat today, and it was Uncle Bobby mentioned that Trump was sued back in the day for housing discrimination, for marking particular applicants of colored people. And we got this whole long apologetic, how it wasn't really Trump, it was his father, and all of this type of stuff. And so I pulled up this little clip. I don't actually remember the story. It wasn't, it's before my time. So I want to roll this and get your thoughts and commentary on this, and also see how this holds up to the conversation we were having earlier.
14,000 apartments in 39 different buildings, all mostly white tenants. That is until the Department of Justice took notice in 1973 and slammed Donald Trump and his father Fred Trump with a lawsuit. Trump management was charged with discriminating against African Americans and breaking federal law. Donald Trump, then just 27, was president of the company. The Department of Justice accused the Trumps of violating the Fair Housing Act, arguing they were turning away renters based on race and color. Who tipped them off? Local activists, so-called testers, posing as potential renters at Trump's buildings, mainly in Brooklyn and Queens. Elise Goldweber was a lawyer for the DOJ's Fair Housing section at the time and was called on to handle the Trump case.
When the black testers came, they were shown, they may have been shown apartments, but were told nothing was available. Whereas when the white testers came, yes, there were things that were available. That would be the norm.
And if the Trumps did rent to a black person, Goldweber recalls, they would do so only at one building in Brooklyn, reserving the other buildings for white tenants.
That the white people would live in Trump Village and the people of color would live in Flatbush.
And according to the Justice Department, they even had a secret coding system to do it, a racial code. Here's how.
Some of the applications were marked with a C, which we learned that it meant colored, so that the prospective tenants who had come in were noted to be colored.
Yes, you heard her right. The Department of Justice alleged applications submitted by prospective African American renters were designated with a secret code, such as C for colored, to indicate a black person was looking to rent. In true Trump fashion, Donald Trump hit back, calling the government's accusations absolutely ridiculous, and telling the court, "I have never, nor has anyone in my organization ever, to the best of my knowledge, discriminated or shown bias in the renting of our apartments." Trump's lawyers said the government's suit failed to give names, addresses, or specific incidences of discrimination. Claiming the lawsuit caused substantial damage to their business and reputation, Trump took the most unusual step of suing the Justice Department for defamation, seeking $100 million in damages. But that countersuit was tossed out by the judge. Even so, the Trump family maintained they never discriminated based on color, but were instead trying to avoid renting to people on welfare. 2 years later, in 1975, Trump and his father settled the case, agreeing not to discriminate against anyone. They also promised to advertise in publications aimed at minorities, familiarize themselves with the details of the Fair Housing Act, and notify civil rights groups of apartment vacancies. The Department of Justice claimed victory, but the Trumps never admitted any wrongdoing, reportedly noting the settlement was in no way an admission of a violation.
Donald Trump made dishonesty.
What are your thoughts? Sorry. What are your thoughts about that, my one black friend? I find this whole thing that's really interesting, because it seems like that was sort of, if only they'd have known what we know now, right?
No, it wouldn't make a difference to Trump supporters. For the most part, it won't make a bit of difference. Well, he was younger then. He wasn't as smart as he is now. Trump had a black girlfriend for a while. There's lots of these instances where clearly the man is doing racist things or misbehaving or discriminating. They don't care. Pocket locker. It's like you and I telling a person who has a belief in the Christian faith about the inconsistencies of the Bible, the behavior of its God, and so on. Ultimately, it's not more valuable than what they believe. What they don't like is less valuable than what they believe.
Yeah.
So they keep the belief.
It was just interesting because I don't know. I guess earlier somebody tried to argue that it wasn't Trump. It was
his father, right? It was his father.
It was his father.
Even though he was president of the company.
That's what I'm saying.
Trump was president of the company.
President of the fucking company. But that to me was the richness of it. Like that's the part that got to me was. That bending over backwards to apologize for him, right? And at what point are you doing something questionably moral and trying to undermine people's narrative in this way? Like to me, it's.
Well, I'll put it to you like this. We're lucky that people are open about this sort of thing.
True. Rather
than being closeted about it. Why are we lucky? Because you now know the character of that person. Again, I'll go back to the example of the guy I'm always correcting on Facebook. When he'll say Biden this, Biden that, Democrats this, Democrats that. And then I can give him more examples of the Republican doing the thing he said he just didn't like than Democrats, without even trying. So what it means is that is a person of little moral character. They just want to prove the other side is bad. Like, no, the other side is as bad as you are, or not as bad as you are. They make mistakes too.
Right.
And they make the same mistake you are making. So that guy, if he's not a Russian troll, and he may be,
right.
That guy is never going to change. He's never going to admit he's wrong to the people who admire him, right? Because he wants the accolades. He wants the support, and it doesn't matter how weak-minded he behaves. It doesn't matter how many people prove him wrong. There's still those people who go, "Yeah, that's right," to whatever he says. Because for them, they don't realize it. They also have shitty morals and low expectations.
Yes. Mm-hmm. That's the kind of thing that's getting to me. Is it's one thing for me to say, listen, I hear what you're saying, that my one black friend, hurt you in this way, but I don't really know him, and I'm not familiar with the details, so I'm just gonna stay out of this, right? Like I get that people sometimes have a hard time. They don't want to throw their people under the bus, but when you get to the point where you're now telling falsehoods or misrepresentations about the story, just so you can turn the person with the problematic behavior into some kind of hero.
Yeah, they have to become the hero again.
Right, they have to become the hero. Even like with the troll, like I'm going to keep blocking trolls. I don't want trolls here. I don't like trolls. So, but it's funny, like, if you want to play the game even just a little bit better, try asking and responding to what the streamer says to you directly. So I directly asked the question, is Trump responsible for the insurrection? They never got a response. They just wanted to keep fighting with YouTube punk, right? Because they wanted to come in, defend Donald Trump because Uncle Bobby had mentioned the housing discrimination thing. Then I say, okay, cool. Is Trump responsible for the insurrection? No, right? They got to totally avoid that question, right? Because it just shows you that they're here to defend that person, right? They're here to make that person the hero, right? Like, because my point would have been, if Trump's responsible for insurrection, what do I care that his father's company got sued? You're supporting an insurrectionist, right? Like, that's what they're here to do.
Well, let me tell you about one of the difficulties, probably the chief difficulty. I'll try to put this in the simplest possible terms. What does that say about me? Right? If they love Trump, and Trump is responsible, what does that say about them? If they love Trump and Trump is a rapist, serial rapist, what does that say about them? If they love Trump because they think he's a good businessman and yet he has consistently defrauded his investors and not paid his bills, what does that say about them? It says they are a very poor judge of, they can be an extremely poor judge of character.
Yes.
And maybe they even misjudge their own character.
Absolutely. Woof. That's 100% dead on. And speaking of stories about misjudging people's character, I want to talk a little bit more about this really curious phenomenon with George Santos. We haven't discussed it much. You and I haven't discussed it at all.
No.
But, it's only even come up maybe here a couple times on the channel. And I think it's a good thing to discuss. And hopefully if Neil joins us, I'd love to get his take on some of these things too. But let's get this set up, and there may be some some facts that have to be repeated here or whatever. But I'm interested to hear about this.
There are actual facts within the George Santos sphere,
dude. It's crazy. It's like it's like every day there's a new layer pulled back of lies. So who knows?
Acceptable in the Republican
It's really got to the point where we're like, George Santos, if that is his real name, like,
Donald Trump made dishonesty acceptable in the Republican Party. Donald Trump made blatant lies acceptable in the Republican Party. And I can tell you that before the election, there were Republicans who knew, because there were rumors out there. This guy's shady. We don't really know about him. We don't know if everything he's saying is true.
Wait, are you talking about Santos or Trump? Which one are you talking about? You're talking about Santos.
I'm talking about the more recent case, which is George Santos. So, and Republicans went ahead and looked the other way, and many actually ended up supporting this guy. So the party does have to kind of reevaluate its standards now, hopefully, as Donald Trump fades in the back view mirror. And it's just absurd that they went ahead and supported this guy anyway, and that some are tolerating his service in the House. It's unimaginable, just like it's kind of unimaginable that Democrats and their research arms did not find any of this before the election.
Right. There are a lot of oppo teams hitting their head against a wall tonight. Here's the thing, which is I was talking about Santos and I said misleading statements, that he has apologized for this. I'm going to put misleading statements in like the biggest air quotes ever, because we're talking about really substantive lies here, some of which this New York Times article showing an unregistered fund that raised money for Santos and that efforts to elect Santos may have skirted campaign finance rules. You tweeted that there are about a dozen federal campaign finance violations described in that article. Tell me more.
Look, when you run for Congress and you do it successfully, you become aware of all of the prohibitions on coordination, for example, with super PACs. He cared about none of those rules. I mean, this is someone who basically, whose campaign became one and the same with the super PAC that he was raising money for, except it turns out that the super PAC didn't even exist. Like, it wasn't even registered under the, it wasn't even registered through the FEC. And maybe, by the way, that is the source of where he got some of the income that he ultimately reported. Maybe the money that he was directing people to donate to this fake entity was money that was actually going to himself. And so I wouldn't be surprised if we ended up learning about that.
And I want to be clear to our viewers. You and I both sort of laughed as you said that because it is so flagrant and it is so unimaginable. I mean, there are entire teams of people who are hired not just to raise the money on a campaign like this, but also to vet, to make sure it's going into the right fund, that it's coming from the right people. I mean, this is complicated work and rules that people are supposed to follow.
Most candidates hire attorneys to advise them on how to avoid FEC violations. And, you know, not only did he appear not to have done that, but he appeared to have created this fake entity, and it's one of many lies. The thing is, there any subset of the things that he has said is enough for him to resign, but that's not going to happen so long as the seat can flip to a Democrat like Tom Suozzi, for example, who I'm sure would love to run for this seat if it became available.
Right, and that's the macro politics of it, Congressman Corbella, which you know, we'll come back to. But I want to remind everyone, I mean, this guy has constituents in his district. I want to play some sound from MSNBC of voters who live in Santos's district. Take a listen.
I want this man out. I want him out. He had the nerve to say that in 2 years you can vote me out. I don't answer to politicians. I answer to my constituents. Well, I'm one, and I want him out.
McCarthy, I don't care if you want his vote. You're losing all the other people's votes when you do this. I mean, it's garbage.
I mean, at this point, I think our audience, both of you are so well read in on the politics of this, where in New York State, they really felt, the Republican Party, that they were making gains. Congressman Carballo, they are frustrated because they do not want to see Santos jeopardize the inroads that they feel that they have made. And that is why you have a bunch of Republicans from New York saying this guy has got to resign. What you're hearing from Republicans in Washington, D.C., specifically leadership.
Felicia, how many times you gonna say bye? We got you. We're cowards. We're the worst. We don't want to debate. We're afraid. Oh, we got it. We got it. They're like, God, this is like a person who breaks up with you like 7 times. Like, I got it. We're not together. You don't like me. It's not me. It's you. I got it. Oh my goodness.
Sounds a little different. At what point do they decide they can't stand with him any longer?
Well, Alicia, the real tragedy here, I think you put your finger on it, is the voters of that district in Long Island, because those voters essentially have no representation in Congress right now. No one, Republican or Democrat in Congress, takes George Santos seriously. No one will work with him on any legislation. Republican leadership does find him useful because the margin in the House is so tight. If Republicans had a 30 or 40 seat majority, they would have waved goodbye to George Santos a long time ago. So right now, the only purpose that George Santos is serving in Congress is protecting that very slim Republican majority. When the numbers are so slim, you have to worry about flight cancellations, people getting sick, people having bathroom emergencies during votes. So that's his only purpose in Congress right now, and that's a disservice to the people of his district. And as you said, even for the Republican Party of Long Island, of the state of New York, that did make significant inroads in that state this year, this is going to set them back because it's a major embarrassment. And the longer he stays in Congress, the longer and deeper the embarrassment will grow.
So, I mean, Congressman Jones, this is
my one black friend. What do you think's going to happen here? Like, do you see them actually having a chance at getting rid of this guy? Because to me, this is huge. Like, this is even.
Yeah, Okay, so it was just said moments ago in the clip you were playing that they need him. One other analyst said it's about power. So the Republicans have power. They can't afford to lose power. So even though George Santos is not the most savory of characters, he gives them power. Right. And so they don't want to let him go. Trump was the same way, right? Trump gave them power.
Absolutely.
So even though many of those Republican officials had a conscience and can clearly see he wasn't the best example, Trump's endorsement had a lot of power behind it. So people would just go ahead and play ball and give him whatever he was asking for or help him not get prosecuted, that sort of thing. Because why? It kept them in place. It kept them powerful. You got to remember, those are very lucrative jobs. I'm not going to say they're cushy jobs because I don't believe they are. I don't know that they are. But those are very lucrative jobs because you make a lot of really great connections and you hear about a lot of things before they get popular and expensive so you can buy in at a lower price. So there's a vested interest for them to keep power. And if Santos is an embarrassment, he's in. Who cares? Donald Trump did one embarrassing thing after another. Who cares? He's in. You can name Democrat after Democrat who's the same way. Who cares? They're in. We need their power. And as long as you can control it, great. The moment they jump ship, like a Kirsten Sinema who's like, you know what? I'm just going to be a maverick. Then you sort of don't know what to do with that person. Like, well, how do we win them back over? You might not ever win them back over. But they have power. So the ability to sort of show your constituents that you're getting things done, you know all about that, is a powerful one. Even if you suck, but they know that it's not your fault, because you could point the finger at all the people around you who are stopping your good ideas from coming to fruition. You are there for your constituents to put those good ideas into effect. And if you have people stopping you, they will understand. Because the beauty of politics is this. If you can get the general public to identify with you, like his struggle's my struggle too, her struggle's my struggle too, you got them forever. You got them till they die, till they can't vote anymore.
Right.
You got them. So I think some people do that very well. Trump did that extremely well because he had the persona, right? Who people think he is, what people think he is like. And regardless of what he did, like, right, he would post tweets and that pissed people off. Yeah, that's how I feel.
Right, absolutely.
The reaction, that's how people react to me when I speak my mind. Job done. He doesn't ever have to do another thing right in that person's eyes. They identify with him. So that's the key. It's a personality, I'd say a personality thing.
So Harley's Quinn lives in New York and said she blames the New York Democrats for this, that they really dropped the ball, and then said she's trying to push out AOC type candidates because they opened the door to right wingers. So I was wondering about that comment.
Is that in the chat or something?
Yeah, it's on the Restream chat.
Okay. Well, forgive me. I don't know how to look at all that. I mean, there's stuff in here from Kitty that I still got to read or respond to. A few other people as well. I don't know how to answer that question.
No, I was hoping it was a question for her to tell me what she means by how they're opening the door to the right wingers, because I think a lot of people, that are not in New York think of AOC as being like a progressive candidate. So I'm wondering why she doesn't. So it's just interesting. But speaking of them dropping the ball, right? One of the things that they brought up that they didn't do their homework with the opposition research. It feels like if he would have been caught up in some social media scandals or said some, racist nonsense on Twitter or whatever, they'd have been all over that. Like, I don't know.
No, Strom Thurmond stayed in office for decades, and he was a racist against black people with a black daughter. Right? He stuck around.
There's Neil. Hey, Neil.
Hey, what's up, guys?
Hi, Neil.
How you doing, man?
Good, man. Just listening to everyone talking. It's a good conversation.
Yes, we wanted to. So Neil, y'all, I don't know if y'all know Gnostic Informant. His link is in the description already. So you should be able to just click on that, go over there and sub. Really appreciate you coming on. You had me on, I don't know, it was a couple weeks ago or something.
Yeah.
Recently got back from Israel with Derek from Mythvision.
Yep.
But yeah, I don't know. There wasn't a game plan. We just wanted to have you on, man. Super excited.
Yeah, man.
We don't have enough guests, and we were kind of doing a bit of a political grab bag, and I thought maybe that would be a good thing to get into, because we don't get to hear you talk about this type of thing much.
Yeah.
But a lot of us are, I think, motivated by the ways in which, at least the way we see it, the sort of conservative theological ideologies sort of undermine a lot of what's going on in sort of the social political sphere. Was that part of the deal for you, or are you the type of guy kind of stays away from this stuff and you've got your own motivations for your apologetics?
That was definitely part of the deal. So when I got out of, I don't know if I told you, I was in prison for 18 months.
No,
in New York State prison. And that's where I became a reader. First of all, that's where I first became a reader. Never read books until I went to prison. But second of all, I became fundamentalist Christian in there, because I was reading the Bible cover to cover, like, every couple of weeks, and reading it over and over and stuff.
Really?
Repeatedly?
Yeah. That's where it was. That's where it happened, in prison.
Wow.
So when I came out, when I got out, a friend of mine who I grew up with, who I knew since kindergarten, was also evangelical at the time, and I just naturally went to his church because I didn't know where else to do.
Sure.
So I jumped right into the right wing Trump. Well, yeah, leading up to that, but yeah, it was a right wing conservative church. Eventually becomes a Trump church, you know what I mean? One of those type of churches.
Yeah.
And I was in that world, like full blown in that world. As soon as I started to deconvert, it's funny because it's like dominoes. Once you take one domino, once one domino falls, the next domino next to that falls, and then the next domino falls, and all of a sudden everything, that your whole worldview falls apart just from one domino falling apart. Yes. So I went from being a right wing fundamentalist reactionary Christian to I'm completely liberal now. I'm completely progressive now. I consider myself progressive. That's probably the best way to describe it.
Sure. Thanks for sharing. Can you describe what that process was like when you were deconverting? Because it sounds like that was a lot of change going on.
And I have the opposite question.
Oh, well, hey, go take yours first. Guys.
No.
Well, that's interesting. I kind of want to know the question now, because what's the opposite of that?
Yeah, the opposite of that is take me through the process of you reading the Bible multiple times and believing it.
Oh, yeah. I was interested in that too.
You actually read it, so it's like,
you do that first. That comes first.
Babel, then you read that and go, come on, guys.
That comes first in the story. So do that first.
Interesting, because when you're in, so this is the thing about Christianity, not even just Christianity, but like religious fundamentalism. It attacks the people who are downtrodden, who are completely, I guess the term would be spiritually bankrupt, or whatever you want to call it. Just like it, rock bottom. So you're in prison, you have nothing. No one's writing you letters. You're just kind of just like a loser or whatever. I'm talking about myself here. And you pull out this book, and all of a sudden this book tells you. So I'll give you an example.
Sure.
One of the main passages that was speaking, I've said this a bunch of times on my channel, was the parable of the what is it called?
The prodigal son.
Prodigal son. Yeah, you already know.
All right, bring it on.
So, prodigal son. I'm the guy. I actually have a brother too, by the way, but which he wasn't a good one, his brother, but it didn't matter. It's just
sure.
I'm the one who's out spending his money and going across the country and like leaving the family and like ruining my life, basically ending up in prison. Well, in this passage, the son finds himself in a faraway land, and he finds himself eating the food that's given to the pigs on the farm, and he realizes this is bad, and I got to go back home, and I can at least work for my father again and be be his worker. I'd be better off there than I would here.
That's right. Mm-hmm.
So he humbles himself and he goes back home. They throw a party for him. Everything's great. I remember hearing that and being like, this is speaking to me. I'm this person. Wow. So I need this like salvation, blah, 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 blah. Well, that's what happened when you're for people who are in a weak state, who are vulnerable. Religion can really grab you because the end result was this: me thinking, okay, I'm in prison, I'm a loser, to getting this like conspiracy. It's not even just religion; it's the conspiracy theory mindset. The conspiracy theory mindset makes you think that you're smarter than everyone else. Everyone else is a bunch of sheep. They're all being brainwashed. It's like you think that you have the truth. You're special. God chose you. You can see through all the bullshit. The mainstream media is lying to you, bro. They're lying to you. You don't understand. But then, so you think you're smarter than everyone else, right? Because you all of a sudden can see through the mainstream media. But little did I know at the time, I'm completely uneducated, no college, no nothing. Basically dropped out of school. I mean, I did graduate, but it was like I barely went to school. I skipped school every day. So I don't know what I'm talking about. I don't know any of this shit. I don't know about climate change. I don't know about none of this stuff. But I think I do, because I listen to people like Alex Jones on the internet, or other fundamentalist types, and I hear them talking, and that makes sense. I can be like that. And so you find that home. It really grabs people who are vulnerable. That's what happens.
The echo chamber.
Yeah, it's the echo chamber.
The sweetness of the echo.
And was someone ministering to you while you were?
Yeah,
was Frank Turek there? Hey man, there was a guy sense.
Just like Frank Turek though, just like him. It might as well been Frank Turek.
Okay,
the guy who was coming in from the outside was one of those types, one of those like right wing reactionary types.
Wow.
Well, so I just want to circle back. So
sure.
Those of you taking notes, as Ivan Van Serta would say, please note that Neil told us he found a message that resonated with him. He saw himself in the message. I'm telling you, that's how those politicians do it. They become resonant with their constituents. They find a way. And that is hugely impactful. Now think of it. At that time, Neil could go out and talk to other people in his world, right, about the power of the Bible, what he learned from that. And he's personalizing those stories that he read. He can equate what happened with the characters in the book with his very own life. And the person he's speaking with can do the exact same thing. And that is why it works. Because it's relatable. I can tell you most of the stories I read in the Bible, I think are so much like falsehood, parable, and sometimes parody and all that stuff. However, it resonates with people. So
100%.
I would have to say, largely they're good stories. Even the talking donkey, the talking bush, and the talking snake. Hey.
Well, that's one of the things we disagree about.
Repeating that now.
I can't stand those stories because to me, I can't. It's just a different association now. But I do remember the feeling I used to get from the stories. So I guess I'll be honest about that. I remember. Well, and part of it was the commitment to them being good stories makes them better, right? At least for me, right? It's sort of like, I think that's what happens with Christian rap and Christian music, right? It's like they've already decided that they like the thing because it's about Jesus. So when Jesus is your favorite superhero, then you love stories that are about Jesus or the proto-Jesuses, or, because that's kind of how you see the stories about Abraham and Isaac, all the stories that are pointing to Jesus. But but you read the Bible, you said multiple times, so you were really in it, hunkered down. Because I got to be honest, I don't think it's easy to read the Bible cover to cover. I think it takes real commitment, and it's serious. I mean, especially if you go warts and all reading, right? Like if you're going to read through the begets and all of that type of stuff. So you were really feeling something spiritual at that time.
Yeah. It's definitely, there's something powerful about thinking that you have found something. You imagine finding some sort of you I don't know, you're out and hiking and you find some sort of magic stone that gives you the power to levitate. It's you think that you found something that no one else knows about, and you have this special thing, and you're chosen now, and everyone else they're all doomed to hell, and you're chosen to be saved, and you have the truth, and the better politics now, and you have everything, and you see the world through. It's the Andrew Tate, how Andrew Tate says, all I need is my senses. I don't care what peer review says. I can sense things, and that's all that matters. And when he was debating Hassan Piker. Hassan Piker said, they were talking about women driving. He said, women just can't drive. I've seen women get in car accidents. And then Hassan Piker pulled up the statistics. Said, here's the statistics for 2022, or whatever year it was, 2016 or something. And he said, it turns out that men get in 60% more car accidents than women do. He said, how do you explain that? Well, that's wrong. My senses matter more. It's then he said, okay, well, what about the earth, or what about the sun? It looks like it's going through the sky every day. It looks like it's revolving around this earth. Is it revolving around the earth, or is it the other way around? He got quiet there. So it's not about what your senses, not about what you think is right. It's about the objective facts. But when you have that mentality of, whatever my senses perceive are true, you'll just do anything and think you're okay, you're justified, you're right, because you're smarter than everyone else.
Yes,
that's the mentality of the fundamentalist.
I was also wondering, was there something to buying into the meta narrative of freedom? Because I feel like when you're locked up, feeling like you have something that makes you feel like your reality is beyond these four walls is, super critical. And then at the same time, I feel like, that's a particular low point for a lot of people. So you are trying to clean up and get your act together too, right? And then a lot of us, I think, buy into sort of the social messaging. I know I did, right? Where being a godly man was going to help me be a better person, stay out of trouble, right? And I have mental health issues, I have criminal past, and so feeling like I could use the chastening of the Lord. I don't know. It appealed to me. I don't know if that.
Yeah, that's definitely part of it. That's a huge part of it, actually.
All right. Well, this is a question for you both. Did you both feel that you had a duty to go out and convert others, to sort of win them for Christ, as a result of you rising out of your own situation, right? You're sort of bursting free from being trapped in carbonite, and now you can go influence the world. Did you both have that feeling?
I did to an extent, but when I look back now, it was more I thought I was doing that at the time. And I even convinced myself that I was, but now I look back and I remember, and I'm thinking now it was more about myself, trying to play a role, I'm going to save you, and whether you accept it or not, at least I got to show you how good I look and how I'm on the side of the truth and you're not.
Pocket locker.
But yeah, because barely anybody would actually say, "Yeah, let me convert right now." It happened very, very rarely.
Yeah, I can relate to that. I don't know. For me, I think I was always that way. So well before. So I think I'd always had a mentality to serve the church. I think it certainly elevated my sense of, wanting to keep people out of trouble. But I definitely relate to working at a church and spreading my testimony, sharing my testimony, and we did a lot of great work in the community, but there was a lot of within the church work that you felt really great about that looking back is literally preaching to the choir? I mean, it's just so, so it's just, that's kind of fun. So when did you start? So you said, so you got out and then you go to a friend's church because you know them already. I believe that I did the same thing, try to maintain some relationships because you're trying to get yourself situated when you get out. When did you start deconverting? What triggered that?
The first domino to fall, it just happened to be that I was at a King James only church. So the first domino to fall was, is the King James really perfect, pure, and flawless? And when I started to that's what did it for me. Because when I started, I actually left that church. I went to Pentecostal. And the last church I went to, believe it or not, my last day attending church was getting baptized in a Pentecostal church because I thought changing churches would be the answer. And then I remember leaving that church and be like, nope, I'm out of here. This is it. I'm done. I'm an atheist now. Like, literally, it was like, I'll check out Gnosticism.
Oh, you remember?
That was the last day. My last day.
And you kind of remember like you were done.
Yeah, I remember being like, if this baptism, if I don't feel the Holy Spirit after this, it's over. Isn't that crazy? That was my last day in church. My last day in church was getting baptized.
And you got baptized, and then you were like, nah, they just dunked me in the water. Like, they just dunked me in the water. That was it.
Yeah.
That was dumb.
But before that, what was the question again?
That was it. Like, how did you start deconverting? Like, what
before that. So the reason why I even left that church to go to a Pentecostal
church
was because I was at a King James only church, and they would talk about how the King James Bible is the perfect translation. It's perfectly, there's no flaws with it. It lines up with the manuscripts. It's perfect. There's no errors. All these other NIV Bibles, they're all flawed. And I remember one day I came across, somebody challenged me and said, what about 1 John 5:7? And I go, what do you mean? I go, look at the verses, check the manuscripts. I go, here. The person was like, here, I'll send them to you. Sent me the whole manuscript tradition of all the Greek, where you can see the interlineary, the translations right next to it. Okay, I'm looking at that. I'm like, oh, wow. So I'm looking at the King James, and I'm like, there's like 20 extra words here. There's like 20. This is a whole other passage added here. Wow. And I was like, wait, did they take them out or did they add them? That's the question. So I did some digging. So I started, and I remember watching Bart Ehrman videos before I even knew who he was.
Really?
He has videos on the King James Bible, the problems with it. So I found Religion for Breakfast. He had a video on it too. I started looking into that section, the King James stuff, and I remember being like, dude, there's problems with this Bible. I went to my pastor and asked him the question. You know what he said to me? He said, scholars are lying to you. There is Greek manuscripts, but they'll never show them to us because they hate our Bible, because they know that we have the truth, and they're a bunch of atheists and they hate us.
Neil, if the King James Bible, as I say what Bishop John Shelby Spong said, if the King James Bible is good enough for Jesus, it ought to be good enough for you.
Right, that's what they would say. They would say stuff like that too. They would say crazy shit like that, and like they would be like, they'd say it like half jokingly, but like they were serious.
They were serious.
Yeah, it was one of those weird things that I'd be like, are we joking right now? But like this guy really thought, or maybe I don't know if he thought or he's straight up lied to my face, but he said to me that all the scholars are lying. They're withholding manuscripts from us. This is the original text. Don't listen to them. And then he told me to pray on it.
Wow.
Which didn't work.
When I stepped away, I really liked your Holy Spirit put up or shut up baptism. That
was my last day in church. In fact, if you watch the first video on my channel, Gnostic Informant, it shows me getting baptized. That was my last day in church. That was not my first day in church. It was my last day in church.
I will humbly ask that you place the link to that in the chat.
Sure, I will.
I want to see it.
Yeah, I have it. It's in the video.
Everybody's got their own thing, and I find myself unable to predict what it is, and so that the King James only thing was interesting to me, and I think maybe it's because I probably grew up in, like I say, like an NIV house or something like that. So So we were already, the King James wasn't the.
Yeah, that's not an issue for you.
Yeah, it wasn't an issue. Yeah.
So that kind of helped me out, though. That little layer. If I didn't have that problem, maybe I'd still be there. Who knows?
Absolutely.
So I think one day someone would have said to you, let's go to the end of Mark. And then you go to the end of Mark and they say, all right, can you drink deadly poison and it not harm you? Can you take up serpents? How about this one? Let's make it easy on you. Can you heal people by laying hands on them? Let's see it. And when you couldn't do that, you might be like, well.
Yeah, you're probably right. There probably would have been something else that would have happened.
You don't know what that really means. What that really means is something else. It's not so simple, like I'm saying.
Melody Joy put the chat that the first domino was Trumpism, followed by trying to figure out salvation and being confused by Paul, James, Peter. And Jesus studying the Bible led me out. Some people believe they can heal people.
Melody Joy, I have a story. Can I just tell a story? I know we have a guest. I'd love to tell this. So I have bone-on-bone arthritis in my right ankle, and it's been that way for years. I'm one of the lucky people who can't feel how painful it should be most days. As long as I keep moving, it's okay. Well, one day I was limping pretty badly, and I was outside of a Panda Express in Studio City, California, and a woman comes up to me, stop. Is there pain in your leg? Like, yes, ma'am, in my ankle. She goes, I can heal you. Like, really? She put her hands on my ankle.
Oh, no.
And prayed. Now, I'm an atheist at this point. So for me, I know this is purely for entertainment purposes. It's like scratch-off tickets with the lottery.
Right.
Don't try to make your living doing that.
Right.
So I'm looking at her, and she's praying for me, and she says, in Jesus' name, amen. And because I thought this was a sweet, sweet gesture, I also said amen. And she goes, how do you feel? And I said, the same. It still hurts. She goes, then you don't believe. It's your fault. I'm like, oh my
God.
You know what? That we were watching a faith healer last night, this Dufresne Ministries or whatever. And that is the core message of at least the modern faith healing movement, right? Is that you have to have the seed faith, you have the expectation, and if God isn't granting you the healing, it's because he wants to move through his faith, right? His word promises for him to move in faith. And so if you're not believing properly, then, but it is really terrible because it puts the blame back on the person who's being scammed.
It's a perfect grift.
Right.
Because people already are psychologically predisposed to doubt themselves.
Right.
Yeah.
You walk around and you'll meet person after person who's psychologically damaged, that they don't believe in themselves. They don't think they deserve X, Y, Z.
Yep.
They've been conditioned to underperform, all sorts of things like that. No wonder. I was thinking about on a future show, if we have a Christian on, to ask them, is there anything done by Jesus or his disciples that couldn't be faked by con men or lied about?
Right.
So just with the lying part alone, no, they could have lied about everything.
That's another thing that people don't talk about as much. Is like, if we grant these stories, how do we know there's not like some magician shit going on? You know what I mean? Like, and we what we do know at the time that type of stuff was actually, we know for like through manuscripts and sources, there were people doing that stuff in the same time period. And
they had the knowledge. Well, there is that thought that Jesus was the magician.
Yeah, that's what the Talmud says about him.
Yeah. And he could have, pulled some early Chris Angel type of stuff where you can set up a platform and walk on water and promise the people to do it, and they've got to stay a certain distance, and then he does it, and they were people turning water into wine. That was a common trick. All you had to do was, create a proper device for it where water flows in one side and you have wine that pours out of the other. So I actually used to think that was a really fascinating potential historicity, right? That we're describing a magician. So once these pieces start to fall for you, because it sounds like it was the King James Bible first, right?
Yeah.
So how do you eventually get a problem with like this bigger? How do you eventually figure out where this fits in the bigger picture? Yeah.
It was all happening congruently. Does that make sense? Congruently or parallel?
Concurrently, around the same time?
Concurrently, yeah. It was all happening concurrently with the Trump era.
Okay.
So I'm watching the election go down. And I'm watching people lose their minds. I'm watching all these so-called prophets in the church that are saying that he's going to win another term and he's going to usher in the kingdom of heaven. This is all planned out. It's all in Daniel. It's all in Revelation. It's all going to happen.
So this is this is recent for you. This is 2020, not 2016.
Yeah. Dude, I started my channel I started my channel in late 2021.
Okay.
A year and a half after the election. So I've always talked about this. I'm a recent deconvert, very recent, and I remember watching people being like, he really did win the election, just as Jesus promised, but they're lying about it. And I remember just being like, is our God weaker than the Democrats?
Yes.
I remember being like, no, and like that. It sounds funny, but like that literally, that messed me up, man.
Okay.
It is funny actually, but it messed up my faith in this movement because I remember being like, these are a bunch of losers. Their God is weaker than Satan. Satan is in control of everything. They can't this can't be right.
Right, because they named it.
All these things that are planned by these prophets are not happening, and now we have this guy who is crying about the election, and I really wanted it. It was the greatest election of all time. I remember like, this guy's a loser. This guy cannot be the leader of this movement that I'm in. I'm like, I'm done with it. Like that, and I think I speak for a lot of people too that moved to the left after that election. Not even just Christians, people just political in general.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
Well, Trump would put the mess in Messiah for sure, and he's just fantastic at lying. He learned that from being in real estate and being a developer. He learned that there. Look, if you tell your investors there's a possibility this could fail if the following things could happen, and then you list absolutely everything that could happen. But then you talk about how great it's going to be, and then he can say, I got plausible deniability. I told him this stuff could happen, and then it happened. He said before the election, and Barry Schwartz said it before Trump did, he said if he loses the election, he's going to say that there was cheating involved.
Yeah, they were saying that. I remember that.
So Barry Schwartz said that before Trump did it. He says if I lose the election, it's only because they cheat. So Trump eventually said it. Now,
he said it.
Excuse me. I don't even need Trump to open his mouth to tell me a second time that it's somebody else's fault he didn't win. And he'll say stuff like, and ministers say stuff like this too. And like it was, for me as a person who is like interested in anthropology and sociology, it was very interesting to watch. He said, I got more votes than any other sitting president ever did. Not enough people could say when Republicans who supported Trump would repeat that, but it only takes one more vote than that to lose. And Biden had millions of more votes than that. So Trump isn't lying when he said I got more votes.
But you know what's funny about
that? He didn't get more votes than Biden. What?
Almost every election has more votes than the election before that because population's growing every 4 years.
Mm-hmm.
Sure.
So that's such a weak claim. Fallacious statement to begin with.
Right. And people who didn't vote, there's people who didn't vote in a previous election. They now vote in this upcoming one because they feel, this is so important. And I realize that my vote does make a difference. I mean, anybody who doesn't think their vote doesn't make a difference can look at that race Lauren Boebert had, where it was down to like hundreds of votes between her and the other guy who, quite honestly, probably would be doing a better job.
Yeah, she is just, oh my God, that lady.
So it's middle school all over again, her and Marjorie Taylor Greene. And I'm like, what, ladies, you got to realize the position you're in. You can really do some good. You can really do some amazing things. And why not do that instead of just arguing and not getting anywhere, right? Just again, Trump, as if that's supposed to do something for you. So,
and they make those two make AOC look like a rocket. Like they make her look like a superstar in comparison, because they used to always talk about AOC as, oh my God, she doesn't know what she's doing. She's just a young girl, doesn't know she's blah blah blah. And then they vote for these two, like Marjorie Taylor Greene, Lauren Boebert, and I'm like, in comparison, AOC is like the smartest person alive compared to those two.
Well, they criticized from the outside, right? And then they got in that position and saw how hard that job is.
Right.
And realized they didn't know how to do it. And she knew more than they did.
Yeah, exactly.
So, by the way, a moment ago, we were talking about political things like getting elected with the Santos sort of thing. Right now, Matt Gaetz is being investigated for transporting minors across state lines for like reasons of prostitution and stuff like that.
Yeah,
he's still in office. He's still in office.
You know what's funny about that? I didn't know why Matt Gaetz was holding his vote against what's his name, the House Speaker. I forgot his name already.
McCarthy.
And I'm like, why is he doing this? And then I looked into it. The reason why he was doing it is because McCarthy didn't help him out when he was being charged for human trafficking. And I remember just thinking to myself, how repulsive and disgusting is this party that they're holding off an election because somebody didn't help him and defend him for human trafficking. I was like, the more he holds off, the worse it looks for this party in general.
Yeah, absolutely.
But I'll say this. They don't have to change. That's the honest truth. They don't have to change. They can stay the exact same, still maintain power again and again. Dusty Smith frequently will make the comment on his Cult of Dusty podcast how the Republicans haven't won an election in like 40 years. Without gerrymandering or something like that. I'm not repeating what you're saying very well, but we all get the idea. So if that's what it takes, if you just people can't vote in a rectangle or a square, you got to have that wiggly line going all over the place just to get these people in who are Republican and exclude these people who are Democrats so it could be fair. It's not fair.
It's crazy.
If the ideas... Right. I, as an atheist, I consider this. If the ideas that are the dominant ones in the nation are ones that I can't identify with or I can't support, maybe I need to live somewhere else. There are other places who will align more with my thinking. Like, I don't think we should have prayer in school, organized prayer in school. Any kid ought to be able to pray if they want to.
But you know what's, not to cut you off, but I just thought of something, because what you're saying makes a lot. It's really actually profound, because that's how you know there's a minority in government that have a lot of power, a lot of money, a lot of weight behind their movement. Like, thinking of Matt Gaetz, he's holding back. He's forcing this like weeks long thing where everyone has to vote. And why? Because he's mad about some guy who didn't help him out and against his criminal shit. And I'm thinking about how powerful does someone have to be in that position where he can do that and get away with it and no one's talking about it. Not even CNN's talking about it. Like, who is he paying? What's behind that force of like power? There's something going on with that. And like, most people don't want these religious right movements. Maybe in Texas they do, but most states don't want that, but yet that presence still there. How does that happen?
Well, people put Matt Gaetz in power. Minorities, I'll give you an example. Minorities have a lot of power, and I typically wouldn't care what minority there is. You could say, like, in the 60s, look at the boycotts when blacks and Latinos and whites said, okay, well, we're not going to ride the buses.
Yeah.
Well, what do you mean you're not going to ride the buses? Yeah, we're not. We're going to carpool. All that money gets sucked out of a business, an empire, if you will. And now there has to be change because we're not going without our money.
Right. But the minority I'm talking about is not a minority without power. It's the minority of people with money and resources who don't represent the masses like me and you. They represent a small group of people. That's what I mean by minority. Do you understand what I'm saying?
So they're a numerical minority, but not
nothing to do with
like the leverage.
But again, that numerical minority is funding a lot of these candidates.
Absolutely.
Yeah,
They
exactly.
get their way. Otherwise, you don't get the money you need to get reelected. I'm a big proponent of. I got a lot of weird ass ideas about politics, but you can't use private funds to run for office. You have to get signatures. You have to register to run for office, and then there's a government-funded fund, which means we taxpayers pay for it, that all the money for your campaign comes out of. Period. No, Monsanto can't give you $10,000. They can't give you anything. When it comes to your salary, there's an app that people in your state sign up for, and there's a cap. They can contribute a maximum of $10 and no more. So if you don't do a good job and the salary cap is 180K, you just don't get your money. You get what people think you're worth. And if you can't find that many people to give you $10 out of their own pocket, because that's where the money comes from, then you're not doing a good job. They don't support you.
That's a good point.
So,
but at the same
you can't
time,
invest while you're in office. I got all that. You can't invest while you're in office.
Yeah, I get that. I agree with that. That's where so much of the problems are. It's money, it's power, it's
overwhelming
the rich,
sense of impending
it's
doom.
The people who I'm just thinking of an example of my own life where I know somebody who was just like me. He screwed up in his life. He was a heroin addict. He went to prison. But he had a family business that was just given to his lap the day he cleaned up. And most people in the addiction world don't have that to work towards. They have to work at Walmart or something, where he has here you go, you're good. And so people like that, and even this happens in politics, like Matt Gaetz, he can screw up and he'd be fine. People like that, they can literally, I'm trying to explain how to explain this. They can literally, they can screw up and go and still move up the ladder.
Fail forward.
Forward.
Fail upward.
That's what I was looking for. They fell forward. And then we have a system where there's people who fell forward and there's other people who try really hard and can't move forward. Absolutely. And that's where I see, and that division gets worse and worse and worse. And it's almost like we have two, but the problem, here's the really shitty part about it. That there was people like my old self. There's a lot of people in America right now who are voting against their own interest.
Yes.
They think that they're voting for freedom and liberty and freedom of speech. Jordan Peterson told us about this. But really what they don't realize is they're voting for people who already have all the power and they're just going to keep it.
Well, I think with you mentioned freedom of speech, and I think the agenda that certain Christians have to make the United States a theocracy, those are people who, unlike you and I, haven't read the Bible all the way through. Because there are a lot of things that if we were to be living biblically in this country, they are currently illegal.
Yeah.
And these are decrees of God, right? These are some of the 613 commandments of God. They are literally illegal in the United States. We have moved on from that limited, primitive thinking and made some progress. Today, we can look around and still see limited, primitive thinking in our modern society where, well, I don't like the idea of drag queen story hours because I don't want our children to be groomed. Well, which is more sexual, a man dressed up as a woman or the women at Hooters?
Right.
But you notice how
I go there for the chicken.
You notice how that directly contradicts the whole freedom and liberty attitude. All of a sudden, the things they're told are not good. They need to be against that, even though they're really going. The whole freedom and liberty attitude is just a facade. They're not letting people be free. They want people to play roles. All men do this. All women do that. Play your role. I don't care what you really want to live like. That's not cool. You got to do this. You got to do that. That's not freedom and liberty. It's the exact opposite.
Look, if the biblical system was so good, people wouldn't sin at all. There'd be nothing that you would see, no behavior that could be called a sin if it was that good, but it's not.
Yeah.
I've told a story, and Neil, I don't think you were with us when I did. I made up a story about like a sort of an African story about a God that gave his life in trade of righteousness for the people. So instead of people being able to sin, they still had free will, and nobody wanted to ever commit anything like a sin. And so they didn't have sin in their culture anymore because this God gave his life. And it was an effective sacrifice, unlike Jesus, where people just kept on sinning, right? A believer can sin, even though the Bible says they cannot.
Right.
So, all right, great. I've told a better story, but the world isn't like that. You know, the world isn't like what the Bible says it should be like either. And it's never going to be like what the Bible says it should be like. I don't think that has to make us sad. I don't think that has to say, well, we're always taking a step backward. No, I think the best thing we can do is realize that a person must create themselves in a way. We all need to refine each other, yes, but one must be about the business of refining oneself to be the best person we can be in our society. And that doesn't mean stealing and taking advantage of people so that they have less, but maybe building together so we all can have what we need. Right?
Yeah.
So, you know, but it isn't that way. It's that way for some in your life. When let's take your friend that you use as an example. Let's say his family finally saw we can finally trust him with this business that we've taken the time and care to build. He would have thrown her all away before. Well, he's not going to do that now. He got the help he needed. He finally got the vision that he lacked.
Right.
And he could manage this well. Well, maybe that guy's going to do better than everybody else who came before him, you know, for that company.
Right.
And maybe in 5 more years, that company won't be around. He will have sold it so he could buy drugs or run it in the ground or try to screw some girl in the warehouse. And then that's the end of that, you know.
Right.
Who knows? Who knows?
Yeah, that's just... Yeah, it's not, and I can think of multiple examples of people failing forward. I've seen it many times. Mm-hmm. It's great. It's kind of a crazy thing if you think about it. Like, but there is no. People talk about equality, and even Jordan Peterson will say it's all about equality of opportunity, not equality of outcome. But do we really have that? I don't think so.
No.
Well, I would say it's more about the quality of opportunity. It's. I think I'm a living, breathing example of this. I had a chance right out of college to go to work for one of my brothers. This is in 1995. I graduated. He was going to pay me $100,000 a year in 1995 to go to work for him. I would be traveling the world buying scrap metal. Like, let's say there's a battleship in England. They're not going to sink it for military purposes. They're just going to sell it for scrap. And then I would have gone to China to broker deals, or other places in the United States or around the world to broker deals to sell the scrap metal. $100K a year, 1995. And I said to my brother, nah, I got a vision. I want to go to Hollywood and be an actor and a writer. That's what I wanted to do.
Really?
And yes. And so I took my marketing degree and off to Hollywood I went.
Wow.
Where I think it was, 17 years before I ever made $100,000 in a single year.
Wow.
And it wasn't because of acting. It was doing the stuff I do now. It wasn't because of acting. The money, July of last year, I made more money in July of last year than I ever did acting and writing combined. Like every single paycheck for acting, every single paycheck for writing, stuck together. I made more money in a single month. So the quality of my opportunity to follow my dreams, go to Hollywood and be an actor, was shit. The quality for going to work for my brother and making a ton of money was excellent. But I chose what I thought would be more fulfilling. I chose what I thought would be an unhindered, direct path, because I would simply show up and companies like 20th Century Fox would be saying, yes, Jesus, thank you for sending my one black friend to us to be in our movies, in our TV shows. That's not what happened.
Yeah.
They were like, you don't have any lines. You're an extra. Just stand in the back and don't look directly at the camera. That's excuse me. I love to share this story. Again, quality of opportunity. I was in a monster movie, or there's the attack of these creatures, and I was in a bar. I was in a scene that was in a bar. Again, I am not the star. I'm just some schmuck in the background. And we were together. It was a small movie. We were together for like 15 days. So it was me, some other bar patrons, and some monsters. And I got to know the director, the producers, many of the other actors. And they call us in, and all right, you guys are all dead. They've attacked you. The ghouls have attacked you, and you're dead on the floor. So, and he goes, all right, my one black friend, you lay down right there. So, okay. So I lay down, and the director says, move your left leg. And I said, you mean like I'm twitching, like I'm dying, and this is just my body reacting? He goes, no, just move it forward, or move it backward. Okay, I move my leg. He goes, a little more. Okay, a little more. He goes, that's perfect. Now you're in the shot. And I'm laying on the ground, just my fat all jiggling because I'm laughing. And I says, you just wanted my leg? He goes, yes, and everybody starts laughing, and I'm like, okay, this is my moment.
Wow.
And that was my great Hollywood moment. It never got any, well, I guess there's one thing it got. I don't know. I did a couple cool things because I knew some cool people who had some good connections. But as far as me being on camera, that's the pinnacle right there, right?
Damn.
But if I just would have said, I'm not going to lose that vision of going to Hollywood and being an actor, I could have worked for my brother for 10 years, right? I could have saved my money, and probably even with investing and all that stuff, I probably could have been worth $2 or $3 million at the end of 10 years. I could have then gone to Hollywood, taken a few acting classes, and made a low budget film that I wrote.
Right.
I could have done that.
Yeah.
So that's not happening now. None of that's happening now. So did I throw away a better opportunity in favor of the opportunity that I thought was better? Yes. I absolutely say that, because I might have lost the idea to work in Hollywood at all, and then here we are almost 30 years later. If I would have stayed working for my brother, he wouldn't run his company, I would.
Right.
$100,000 a year is 30 years later, probably making $3 million a year.
Damn.
Yeah.
Driving a company car. Yeah. And traveling the world, right? And knowing how to really live it up. So it's the quality of the opportunity. I have a brother who, he worked for a company he was a high school dropout, but when they saw him, like, oh my gosh, this kid's mind, he's extremely good with math and all that stuff. And they offered to pay for his college so that they could bring him into management there at this logistics company. And he turned them down. I thought, man, I hope I'm never that stupid. It turns out I was even more stupid than him. So, and I went to college.
Cumulative case.
So again, it's the quality. It wasn't as fun, right? That idea of going to school for somebody else to work a job at some company wasn't as fun as him racing motorcycles and chasing women.
Right.
Which he was excellent at both of those things. That was more fun. So if you talk to him today, he has zero regrets. I do.
Wow.
Yeah, it's zero regrets. He's got like 13 kids. Can't ride a motorcycle anymore, but oh well. It was fun while it lasted.
Yeah.
So I think for many people, let's go back to politics and religion. For many people, what are they getting out of their faith? What are they getting out of belonging to this or that political organization? I think a lot of it is reaffirming the choices that they've made. saying, excuse me, that me voting for Trump is the right choice because why? Trump understands me. Trump understands my struggle, and he's a businessman, and he knows how to advance this country. They don't know about his failures, and if they do, well, he's doing okay now, right? Right. And again,
it's like he's tapped into this mindset or this like attitude of people who are reactionary in one sense, but they're also like it's also like this like masculine energy, this male like dominant like I could take charge, and you know America's all about being like, you know, the best and the strongest and having the biggest biceps and having the nicest cars, and who cares about the climate, guys? Like, it's, you know, we're all going to hell or heaven anyway, who cares? Like that mindset.
I think I can distill that even more.
Let's hear it.
I don't feel powerful, but I can be. Look at Andrew Tate. What's the draw with that guy, right?
That's exactly the same energy.
There's nothing special about that guy.
You can even tell
but he knows how to manipulate people.
Yeah, it's
the only thing special about that guy. And so when other people watch him, I don't want to be stepped on. Well, how does Andrew Tate go about not being stepped on? By stepping on people. Right. Trump. How does Trump go around not being stepped on? By stepping on people.
It's amazing.
If that's all you need to learn, I just told you. You don't have to buy a book from me. I don't sell one. You know, you don't have to watch me hours and hours repeating that. You already understand it. If I say it again, you're not going to understand it better. So if that is the easy way, if that is the fun way of rising up out of where you came from, you're going to be miserable one day.
Yeah. It really is amazing how there's so many people who identify with someone who like you can clearly see they're losers. Mm-hmm. Us three right now, we look at Andrew Tate and Trump and we listen to them and we're just like, they're losers.
Absolutely.
But there's people who are sitting there watching that and they see the exact opposite. In fact, that was 4 years ago, me. Well, I remember watching Trump in the first election, the 2016 one, and being like, you know, this guy he's going against the grain, man. He's just, you know, he's just something about him.
Yes, that was it was an easy narrative to sink your teeth into. So, Uncle Bobby always says, you know, like we can get with that, right? But at some point, the disillusionment started for you. You see, like for me, like the parallels are crazy because I feel like now it's so obvious when I look at faith, when I look at, you know, God, I see this monstrous character and I see these people running around telling us God is love and all this, and it just feels like they're ignoring what's right in front of our face. And I feel like that's exactly what's happening with Trump. And now I think this Santos thing has even escalated that to the point that you can just be a complete fraud on the way in, I guess.
Well, I want to just talk about that. I think the armchair psychologist in me says that they are God. In the example you just gave, they are God. If you were to, let's say we had an audience of, 6 million people, and they were almost all theists, right?
Sure.
If they pray that you would win $1 million tomorrow, if you bought just a lotto ticket and the drawing was tomorrow, you would pull the winning ticket and have 400 or whatever $1 million. What is the likelihood of that occurring? It's essentially statistically unlikely with one ticket against the odds that are already extremely against you. So even if they pray for you, but look, the power of the God concept is this, that the person identifies with that because the God can say, that is not what I see for you. That is not my vision of your life. And you keep praying that I guide you. So when I don't give you what you ask for, I'm trying to get you to what you asked for, but you winning the lotto and being worth $400 million is not the way there. Jay, that's not how you become a billionaire. You don't become a billionaire by winning $400 million in the lottery, according to God's plan. But isn't that easier? Isn't that a more direct route? So the failings that God provides is the failings of that individual, their inability to get it themselves, right? I asked my cousin's husband is extremely successful. Like everything the guy touches just is a success. And I asked him, why are you so successful? And he immediately gave God the credit.
Wow.
And now I heard story after story about how hard this guy worked, how focused he was on getting educated, how dedicated he is to his family, and how they support each other. It's really like their story is really beautiful, but he gave the credit to God.
Isn't that amazing?
It is amazing, and by the way, it's not what I expected to hear.
Right.
I sat there and I was like, okay, thank you for sharing. I couldn't say, but come on, dude, you working all these hours, you giving up this for that, and oh my gosh, and your wife helping you and getting the whole family together to do things, and I'm just like,
even in Hollywood with like the awards, whatever, Oscars or something, they were always like, I want to thank God first of all, and I'm like, is that just like
absolutely
is that just like programmed for us to think that way?
I'm gonna say no. However, I have a marketing degree, and it may be useful. Again, religion is useful. I say that a lot, Neil. Mm-hmm. Religion is useful because you will have people who are drawn to what you do strictly for the fact that you are a Christian or you appear to be a Christian, because that means you're safe and what you do is safe. Well, the Bible talks about you can't use foul language if you're a Christian, and yet some of these people who are Christian actors or say they are, well, it's in the script, and they're sticking to the script. They've been hired to do that. Like, hey, bring this character to life, and they could be excellent at it, but that character may be despicable. Well, look, you're supposed to have the absolute best behavior when you're a Christian, but you're a Christian actor doing your job, playing a guy who's despicable. When I was going to church in California, in Los Angeles, I knew actors that wouldn't take those roles. They would be sad, like, yeah, I got off, but the guy's a thug, and like there's no redeemable aspects of him, so I can't take the role. And I'm thinking, I'm sitting next to them in church going, dude, I would. I would, because that's what I thought God had in his plan for me. But they thought that's not what God has in his plan for me. I can say no to that, so I can say yes to something that is more in alignment with my values. And I would sit there going, wasn't that how God's going to sort of get you there? You can talk about it in interviews and stuff like that and tell people why this is not the kind of character anybody ever wants to be in life. They didn't see it like I saw it. They had their own take. So I know there's certain, I'm not going to name names, but I think you could probably know who they are when those people get up there and they thank God. And then let's take R. Kelly as an example. I guess I will name a name. He would get an award for this or that. And yet look at what he was doing. He had some, unsavory, unchristian-like behavior. But he'd thank God.
Right. And by the way, that's the thing about Christianity too. It doesn't matter. You can be Adolf Hitler, and you can get saved on your deathbed right before you commit suicide.
That's all it takes.
Right. You can just say, I believe in Jesus.
I slide into home.
Yeah.
Slide into my home going. I think most Christians want to be honorable people. They just have moments where they don't want to be honorable.
Yeah.
They whatever the object is or position is or accolade is, they get pretty cutthroat about it sometimes and don't think of, if my children were to see me doing this, would I still be doing it? Or if someone else's children were to see me doing this, would I still be doing it? Chances are, if that was the thought process, or if God was real and God saw me doing this, would I be doing this?
So Neil, what do you think's going on with these people? I mean, you were reviewing some Red Pen Logic videos last night, right?
Yeah, man.
And he seems to be one of these guys. You were pointing out areas where he seemed to be like selectively reading the Bible, and you know, he's making these really bad arguments. I don't know. I have a hard time buying that these people are acting in good faith, but he has this sort of hokey look to him. Like I don't know. It's really weird. Like he doesn't look like a psychopath, but he reasons like one. Like I don't know.
No, I feel exactly what you're saying right now. I know. I understand what you're getting at. You have it's this intense confirmation bias, and I always wonder, was I like this too? Because he probably thinks that he's like dunking on these people. He probably actually believes that. But like, right. I watch his video, and I'm amazed at how weak his rebuttals are to these videos on TikTok. Right. Like the videos that he's responding to with Billy Buddha, Jagazis, whoever else. And I'm watching them make really good points, and then he responds, and the look on his face is like, I just slam dunk on them. I just rebutted them. Look how smart and cool I am. But I'm watching, I'm like, everything you just said was really weak.
Right.
And it's amazing.
And he seems to be yeah, I don't get it, and it's hard for me because at the same time they're sort of passionate about how right they are. So they're calling out everybody else for weak logic. They're calling out everybody. They've got the debate me bro mentality, the Jesus is King hat on. Like it's a whole chest beating vibe. But then again, they're really the arguments are really weak. So I find this all very frustrating, and I also feel like people like that are ignoring exactly what we're talking about. Like it's frustrating because it feels like so many of these same people, they're making the anti-LGBT stuff, they're anti-woke, all of this stuff going on. It's almost like they're openly just declaring themselves enemies of humanity, and
that's Christianity, dude. Christianity is like is hate this world. This world is evil. Get away from this world. Be saved from this world. This world is corrupt. This world's going to end. That's like the layer. That's like the bottom layer at the bottom of this onion. That's what it is. The world is evil. Even the Gnostics had that mentality.
Neil, you're supposed to love your enemies.
Right, and there's like
heaping burning coals on their heads.
There's a schizophrenic message there because
it's in there too.
But even though you're loving your enemies, you're really saying I love you, even though you're about to be, thrown into a lake of fire.
Yes,
because you deserve it. So it doesn't. It's like it's very. It's I don't know. It's hard to. It's I guess schizophrenic is a way to describe it.
Allow me to offer this, this was done to me when I was a Christian, and beautifully so, by my friend Amanda. Can you demonstrate to me why I deserve to go to hell?
And they'll say, because you don't follow the laws and that Moses was given. And I'll say, neither do you. And they'll say, but I believe in Jesus, so I get to bypass that.
Yeah. But what makes me not believing in Jesus worthy of eternally suffering? What?
Oh, they'll say no. A lot of them.
That's when you're talking to somebody who realizes maybe there's some character flaws in my.
Yeah, because there's nothing. You're not doing any. There's no action that you're taking. Like I use the example of an Aborigine. from Australia who doesn't speak English, Latin, Hebrew, Greek, doesn't know what the Bible is, doesn't know who Jesus, never heard of the Bible, never heard of Abraham, doesn't know what any of that stuff is. They're going to go and they're going to live their life. They're going to survive in their part of the world, and they're going to do their thing, and they're going to die. And then let's, for the sake of argument, let's say Christianity is true. So they die and they end up in hell, and they go in front of Jesus, who's the judge, and Jesus says, I have to send you to hell. You didn't believe in me. And then, who the hell are you? I don't even know who you are. Well, let me explain it to you. Adam and Eve are your ancestors. They sinned. And so Moses came along, and Moses was given 613 laws he's my father, but he's also me. But anyways, we gave him these laws, and he said, if you follow these laws, you can go to heaven. But I didn't know about these laws. Yeah, we only chose certain people that live in this part of the world. But anyways, don't worry about that, because later on, I came into the world and I said, you forget about those laws. Just believe in me, and everybody's saved. And I died for you, and that changed everything. But I still never heard about that. Oh, but yeah. So I'm sorry, but I got asked to hell. So what happened was someone should have told you. One of my evangelists should have came over to you and taught you about me. I guess they failed in that sense. So I got to send you to hell now. Like, can you imagine that playing out?
Fortunately not. I mean, it's ludicrous on the face of it, and
hey man,
it's
just knowing that can be just knowing that that scenario that I just laid out is not only possible, but if Christianity is true, that's going to happen. That's going to be literally a true scenario. Someone who never heard of Jesus or the Old Testament is going to wind up in hell and say, "Why am I here? I've never heard of any of this stuff." And God's going to say, "Well, that's just the way it is. You were an NPC character in my world."
NPC.
It's just insanity. It's insanity, and that alone is one of those things that defeat Christianity. Just thinking about that.
Yes.
Well, I have to say, it is my personal belief that when you have that heart-to-heart talk with the believer, and you Socratically have them examine the tenets of their faith, the quality of the faith, the reasoning that went into the Bible, I think most people can snap out of it fairly simply. But I will repeat what was said to me. Treat them gently, huh?
I think the more direct you are, the more it helps, right? Because you've really got to help them, I think, see their way out of it. But yeah, so Neil, how do you think it's going, right? Because I actually feel like the people in the chat said your content has helped them a lot. Certainly grown a lot in your time out here. Do you feel like you're helping de-radicalize people by helping them kind of, deconvert or see past the faith?
I hope so. I mean, I like to do so. I don't just do videos that are like anti-theist. I do a lot of videos that are like, let's talk about some ancient Greek religions. Let's talk about some Phoenician religions. And the reason why I do that is not just to like get people to be into that instead of Christianity. It's to show people that Christianity is just like all these other religions.
The common threads.
Yeah.
They're all, there's an evolution of religion over time. It starts from the Sumerians, it goes all the way to America right now. Like there's all these different streams of ideas that go in that's what I try to demonstrate in my channel. Is I really want to show people that religion is it's just like any other form of art. It's like movies and film and music. There's nothing special about it. It's just ideas that come from the human brain.
Well, let me ask you, based on that, what are some of those ideas that you found particularly beautiful, regardless of what faith they come from?
I love the mystery religions of ancient Greece that reflect nature. So the dying and rising thing, like, wintertime, everything dies, and springtime, everything rises up, and sort of reflect that into a character like Adonis or Tammuz or Ishtar or something like that. That's what I like, that kind of, because it's not like, there's nothing like, I don't know, there's nothing like deceitful about it. It's just it's allegorizing the reality that we're all in. That's all it's doing. Also, there's some other stuff out in the East, like the Tao Te Ching, and I think is pretty fascinating for someone in 500 BCE to write some stuff like that. And it's not like theistic at all. It's not like believe in this God or you're going to suffer. It's more like, it's more like wisdom literature, stuff like that. So there are some useful and not even just useful, interesting.
Yeah.
Like it's interesting. That's all it is.
Are there any, I want to say lines, but are there any passages that stand out for you that you've committed them to memory that you'd like to share?
Oh, let me think. I mean, there's nothing really that I can't really think of that's like, I don't know. I don't know what I would say about that. Maybe it's a good question, actually. Yeah, I don't know. I'll think about that.
I have another one. So we got about 20 minutes left. I have a meeting at 6. But where in your journey did you meet Derek? And talk about the change there.
I met Derek a few months into this channel. Actually, I maybe had 1,000 subscribers. If that. Okay. And I reached out to him because I was watching his channel for a while. Derek was a huge instrumental part of my deconversion process because Derek was presenting all these different worldviews that were mythicism, Roman provenance, and all these different. He was bringing on all these different guests, and I'm getting all this information. Dennis McDonald, the mimesis, all this stuff, Gnosticism. I'm like, oh my God, this is amazing. So I started watching Derek, and I reached out to him and wanted to interview him because he was also a drug addict too, who got recovery. Right. He's 8 years clean. I'm 6 years clean. He's 2 years ahead of me. Okay. He started his channel 2 years before me. So it's like he's 2 years older than me. He's 35 and 33. Wow, so it's just like he's like an older brother in a weird way. True. So I've been following his lead and it's been working. He's been helping me out, man. Really.
Oh, that's wonderful.
Yeah, I interviewed him on the channel and we kept in touch, and we've been just shooting texts back and forth on a regular basis.
Sure. And you went to Israel together. What was that trip like? I haven't watched too much of the coverage since you got back. I wanted to ask you guys about that.
Yeah, we went to Israel with Dr. James Tabor, and we went on a tour of the whole entire country, from north to from the Galilee, from the border of Syria all the way down to the border of Amman and the desert of Sinai and Egypt. Wow. We went through the whole entire country. We saw Jerusalem, Nazareth, the city of David, everything. We went to Masada on top of the mountain. We have so much film that we're working on. Yeah, we still have a lot of film to produce and put out there at some point. But here's the thing. This is the thing. Me and Derek did this differently. Most people go to Israel. A lot of Christians will go to Israel and film content and be like, here's where Jesus was, and here's where Mary was, and this is where the Bible says that the donkey was talking. No. Me and Derek were like, okay, here's where they claim this happened. Here we are, and this is what we think. Derek, what do you think happened? What do you think actually happened here? And me and Derek went there with a critical approach. So it's something we changed it up a little bit. Right. So when and we're going to be working on that. I'm actually going to. We're going to be working on putting out some like really highly edited content with that. We had a few other projects that were in the way, and which we just finished actually. So that should be coming up next.
Oh, that's fantastic. What do you have in like what are you excited about on your channel right now? Like what would you say? Because you've been at this a little longer than us, and I feel like my content's always changing. Sometimes I don't even realize it's changing to a new thing, but like where are you headed right now?
I agree. Mine's like that too. My channel's been morphing into different things, and I'm getting into a lot of ancient history and ancient mythologies and philosophy stuff, and like then I'll switch back over to let's do some reaction videos to some apologetic channels, and I'm going back and forth, and But what I'm going to start doing more often on my channel is not just interviewing scholars, but also doing more highly edited content where I'm just reading from script, or something like like talking and being more engaged, like on a personal level. Okay. More videos like that, more highly edited, not just lives.
Sure.
But videos that I'm going to produce and put out.
Sure. What made you want to go that direction? A lot of people are moving the other direction, right? They're going from highly produced videos to lives.
Yeah, I've noticed that too. I don't know. I want to make content that lasts. A lot of times you go live, and there's nothing wrong with this, but this is just what it is. You go live, and that video is relevant for the time period, but then that's old. That's an old video. You're not going to watch an old live video from 2 years ago. Sure. But if you make a video that's timeless, someone can watch 10 years from now. That's what I'm trying to do. Make videos like that.
Okay, so like more like those 10-minute things where they're consumable, they're about a particular topic, and then
like the one that you showed on your channel the other
the top 3 reasons Christianity fails. Yeah, that
more
was
stuff
great.
like that.
Yeah, that was fantastic. What has been your feedback on pieces like that so far?
Oh, people love it. People want more of them, so
it's definitely better, I think, to grow your channel, right? Absolutely. I think lives are fun. They're fun for your current viewership to interact with you, but they're not great for growth, because it's like, oh, hey, check out this guy NEAL. What's this, a 4-hour live stream? Like, no, definitely not.
No, you're absolutely. You just nailed it on the head. For growth, you want to make highly edited content. For sustainable, for keeping that's the lives. I think you're absolutely right about that.
Sure. Yeah, so cool. My one buck friend, I'll toss it back to you. I'm sure you have a couple questions.
Well, it sounds like I need to get on that whole Revelation was written before the Gospels thing, so we can
let's talk about that, actually. Yeah,
sounds like I'm ready to get on that.
Let's start a fight, because NEAL, I think you're a historicist, right? Yeah, and Derek, I think, leans historicist now. So my one black friend is a mythicist, but thinks Revelation was written before the God. I'll let him explain his theory, so I don't get the heat.
All right, let's hear it.
Okay, so why do I think? Let's begin. Why do I think Jesus was mythological? Obviously, you're one of the best people to talk to about this, because you have such a foundational understanding of the religions of the time and other characters, if you will, that were perceived as holy, as divine, and as real, even though they were in fact not real. They didn't exist. I think Jesus is just another one of these people that came along in storytelling that wasn't a real guy. However, if I am to give him humanity at all, I have to make some stipulations. Some things have to be in place. Among those things, the Gospel of John and Revelation would have to be the first 2 books written in the New Testament. Why is Revelation important? I can envision a structure where Jesus and John the Baptist were in cults, and I haven't decided which one would have joined first, but gotten the idea from reading Revelation that they were living in a time, they were 2 special people anointed and appointed by God to become part of the end of the world, to call the Hebrews in from the world back into Jerusalem, so that heaven could, a new Jerusalem could descend down, and there would be a new heaven and a new earth. I don't need the temple to be destroyed in 70 AD, because these things will be thrown down. That's in Zechariah. So when Jesus is on the Mount of Olives saying they'll be thrown down, there's going to be a new Jerusalem. You don't need the old one. Not one stone will stand upon another, of the temple. It'll be completely torn down. Well, hey, look, all I got to do is say to a Christian, well, that temple's not torn down, is it? Well, they built something on top of it, on top of the foundation, yeah. It's just not completely torn down, so you don't have a case there. But anyway, unless all does not mean all, and sometimes it doesn't. So from my standpoint, I would envision whoever the author of John is, well, one of the authors of John, is someone who may have known the real Jesus and may have walked and talked with the real Jesus. And Jesus is like a Trump-like figure. That's not to say that Jesus is despicable. I don't mean it in that respect. Jesus is a person who had a cult built up around him who admired what he did and what he said. And they, like improv, you heighten it, right? When they're writing the stories, it's all heightened.
Absolutely.
It is not possible for all the books in all the world to be overflowing with stories about Jesus. It's not possible. So it's hyperbole. Well, what else in these stories is hyperbole? Eventually, when I sit down and write all this out, I want to detail chapter and verse where I'm coming from with my thinking that Revelation is first, then John, then the other Gospels, which sort of rein Jesus in, right? And they reach back into the Old Testament and pull some of that mythology, those prophecies, they pull it into the time when Jesus is allegedly walking the earth. But that's why I think he could be real, but I need those concessions. Without them, he's just a made-up story. It's just a made-up story about a guy who was supposed to come back. And again, that question, what are some things, what is a thing that Jesus did that could not be lied about or fraudulent? Anything, name one thing that we could demonstrate. And there's nothing. He could have lied about it all.
So you think he's a myth, but you think if he was historical, it makes sense to you that John, the Revelation and John come first?
Yes, because they're using Revelation as their playbook for how things are supposed to turn out. Look, John says to Jesus, "Are you the one we were looking for, or shall we look for another?"
Now, what's interesting about that is when I look at Revelation is writing about events that are happening in the 60s and 70s, with Nero being 666, him falling. You got the Flavian dynasty coming in. You have Nero is definitely post, if not post 70, maybe even post 90, in my opinion. Now I'm wondering how do you throw Mark after that? What's your reason for that?
Sure.
Then we'll get into the historicity thing.
Okay. And by the way, I don't mind being challenged on this, because that's gonna help me develop the idea more, because maybe I have to throw some things out. So how many writers did the book of Daniel have in your study? Was it one or more than one?
Oh, probably more than one.
Ezekiel, one or more than one?
Yeah. Well, if Ezekiel is a text that we're going back far enough where it's probably a rolling text, where there probably was a version of Ezekiel that we'd lost. There probably was editors, and over time it changed. So more than one.
Genesis, one or more than one?
Absolutely more than one.
Could it happen with Revelation too?
Absolutely. Okay. Absolutely.
There you are. So if that is the case, an additional material was added later because they're trying to plug it into current events. Just like we hear people now, Neil, say, "Oh, we're living in the last days." And I chuckle a little when I hear them say that, because I can't wait to see how crazy the next thing out of their mouth is going to be.
So then you're saying certain parts of Revelations are interpolations added later.
Yeah. And I think the same is true for John.
So I don't know if you're familiar with this right here, the pseudepigraphal. There's 2 volumes of this.
Okay.
And it's James Charlesworth put together all the fragments of texts that are not canon. But they sort of revolve around this time period of these Jewish Greek speaking people, and Revelation comes out of a family of text that is apocalyptic in nature, but also has very allegorical approach to history. And there's a lot of these Sibylline oracle texts that have to do with like the rise of Caesar, or the rise of Augustus, the rise of Nero, and it seems like Revelation comes in that vein. So so you could be right about that. Actually, you actually do have some things that strengthen what you're saying, because there's a chance that Revelation could be like the final redaction of that family of text. That makes sense. But that still leaves us with the question: because when I look at Mark, I do think Mark is post 70 as well. I think that.
Really?
But I don't see it being very much later, like I don't know, but it could be. I can't say that I can refute what you're saying definitely, but I wonder what makes you think Mark would be later than that.
Sure, it's because of the things that when you read the Gospels they say are going to occur or are occurring. So again, I have to detail it all out, but when we read Revelation, what are we getting? We're getting Jeremiah rehashed, Daniel rehashed, right? They're talking about what's coming, but they're also talking like this stuff already occurred. So when Jesus is saying, oh gosh, let me try to get a really good. See, I don't have my notes.
So you're like because you have to build this out of a model that prophecy doesn't happen. So it's almost like Mark is retrospecting, projecting, right? Prophesying, which you would imagine to be retrospecting on things that happen later. Because if they weren't, then they would have been probably mentioned in Revelation or something like that.
So what I must establish in my hypothesis, in my theory, what I must establish is that using John and Revelation as primary sources and the Gospels, the other Gospels, as secondary sources, I have to demonstrate things said and done in Revelation coming out of Jesus's mouth, right? I have to sort of show Revelation as the plan.
Sure.
And the Gospels as an explanation of how those events, some of those events, played out. Follow me? Like, one has to follow the other.
So what do you think about, where do you put Paul then? Because most people have Paul as the first Christian text that appear are Paul's letters. Would you agree with that?
I don't agree that's before Revelation. However, when Paul says there was a thorn in his side, he prayed for the Lord to take it away. I do wonder if, again, he's addressing cults, right? He has been addressing cults, if what he says is true, that are offshoots of the Torah. These people are sort of taking it and running with it rather as opposed to being very rigid about it and taking it seriously.
So you think that whoever wrote Paul is not actually Paul, but somebody later on pretending to be Paul?
No. I'm granting, I don't think there wasn't Paul. I think that's just another story. Like all this reads like stories written by students to me. The Gospels do. It just seems like this story.
That's interesting, but because I thought about this too. But then the question is, someone did write it. Whether we call him Paul, whether we call him Tim, whether we call him somebody wrote it, why not just say it's Paul?
Mm-hmm.
I've always been fine with that too.
Well, sure. So let's say that there's that messenger, that thorn in Paul's side given to him by Satan to torment him. In Revelation, it talks about people being sealed in their foreheads by God, or it talks about the mark of the beast, right?
Right.
But God's people also had marks, right? They were also, there's some sort of indicator that they belong on God's side.
The tau on the head, yeah.
So cross. I think we could easily, I think I should be able to demonstrate how maybe at that time, or I guess it's hard to demonstrate it, but at that time, maybe there were some Christian cults who put that mark on themselves. That's how they identified themselves, because they feel that they are the people that Revelation is referring to. Sure. They are going to be there on God's side when the enemies of Israel come there to confront them. Right? So that's how they identify themselves. And if Paul believed something like that, but it turns out that isn't the case, because when this guy Jesus came along, he wasn't this Messiah who fought a war. So that war didn't occur. When Rome attacks Jerusalem, it's not Rome and everybody else. The Huns, I don't know if the Huns showed up, but people from the steppes, the steppes in like Georgia and Russia, they didn't come down there too. Did people come from the southern, Horn of Africa? All right, we're ready to kick some Jerusalem butt. Let's go, everybody.
You're talking about 70 AD?
In 70 AD, that wasn't the case. There wasn't armies from all over the world.
Okay, so what you're talking? So you're talking about Revelation not being fulfilled because it's not armies.
Right.
It's just Rome.
Now imagine Revelation is the rallying cry for events to be fulfilled. And the Revelation is telling you what's coming. And then 70 AD comes along and it's close, but it's not the same.
But so am I hearing you right? You think Revelation was written before 70?
Absolutely.
Ooh, I
would be so bold as to say, let's say Jesus was real and Paul was real and John the Baptist was real. I'm certainly convinced John the Baptist was a real enough person, but I would be willing to say that Revelation was written before John was born, potentially. And additional material making Nero the beast, if you will, was added later. If I could magically
that makes more sense. Okay. How are you gonna? Because if Revelation is written before the war, then that means the person in Revelation is getting things right. You're saying that they're getting these prophecies,
but they're not getting things right. The war wasn't a world war against Jerusalem. It's Rome and whoever Rome hired in their army against Jerusalem. Remember, the armies of the world are supposed to be gathered at Megiddo, right?
Yeah,
but that's not what happened.
Right. Revelation is sort of reflecting in a Platonic sense where you have as above, so below. There's a war. There's armies in heaven fighting against the armies of Satan, where on earth you have Rome going to destroy Jerusalem. And I think the beast falling, the second beast falling, which is clearly 666, it almost has to be Nero, because it only makes sense because in the Latin text it's 616, and it happens to be that gematria equals Nero as well. So you can't have someone else be 616 and 666 with the Latin and Greek. Now that beast falls, and then the next thing that comes after that is probably indicating Domitian, which would be in the 90s. But you're saying you don't think that's the case. You think they're wrong, because either it's not the case, or the person wrote in this extra character that sort of like is just some random guy that people think Domitian was sort of like. Is that what you're saying?
Well, no. If you have the work of Revelation, and if we use my hypothesis that it was added to, there's additional material added in there that if Jesus was real, he didn't have. If John was real, he didn't have. This is added after the fact. You could, decades after John and Jesus are dead, you could make up the idea that it's Nero and implant that in sort of a finalized revelation.
I get what you're saying now. So
yeah,
you think there was it's a rolling text that was changed and edited over time, and then they made it more accurate.
But I don't want to say they made it more accurate. I guess it's better to say they politicize it into a modern context.
Yeah.
So if that agrees with making it more accurate, then I am getting to that same conclusion. I'm just not calling it that. So we're in agreement, but not for the same reasons.
And and also to add to what we're saying, Josephus in the 90s, 96, as well as Suetonius and Tacitus in the late 110s, that decade, they have a text where they seem to be responding to the whole Revelation idea of there being a war in heaven at the exact same time that Titus knocked down the temple. So this was sort of a known thing which actually doesn't even hurt. It actually kind of strengthens what you're saying, because this is all being written later in 90s and 100s. But that would have to be added after the fact, right? Would you agree with that at least?
Well, we can see people in the pulpit adding things today.
Yeah, no, that definitely.
Right? As they preach on it, they're adding things that aren't there in the text, even though it says you're not supposed to do that. Even though another book in the Bible says you're not supposed to add anything to this. Whatever, people do. It's just what human beings do when they're recounting a story.
Now, one more thing I want to ask you.
Go ahead. I love talking about this. I just need to do a better job of organizing the information.
And another reason why people, and I agree with this actually, people put Revelation later is because it starts off with these 7 churches of Asia. Now, if for there being a network of churches, this would have to take time to develop, unless this is not Christian churches. These are just some sort of Greek monotheistic, Jewish / whatever. Is that what you think's going on here?
I'm glad you brought this up. So I'm going to call them cults. Let's call them cult centers. We notice there's a book of Ephesians, but with the rest of the churches, there's no books to them, right?
Yeah.
So, okay. So what they could be, in my idea here, my theory here, is that they are cult centers for what becomes Christianity. They haven't become Christianity yet, but they will be the early churches of Christianity. So when it says, tell this to my angel at this church or my angel here, you know that an angel is also a messenger. So if the messenger is the one who will transmit this information to the congregation, you're sending a letter to that person for what that congregation is indeed supposed to be aware of, the part that they are expected to play, or how well they've been, I'd say, a part of the cult.
Yeah.
So let's. I want to use the Catholic Church as an example. It's too big of an example, but I'll use it as that anyway. So there's the Vatican. So everything sort of scales up to the Vatican, but you can go probably within 4 miles of where you're sitting right now and go to a Catholic church. For me, I'm in the sticks, so it's probably 30 miles from me. Pocket Locker, maybe it's 5 minutes for you. And it's the same message, right, being preached at each one. So let's just consider that. That's how that ancient, in my example, the ancient version of proto-Christianity worked. Now, because they're saying, if they're using Revelation as their book, right? This is before, again, I'll reiterate, it's before Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John. If they're using Revelation as their book of what's going to happen, they know they will play a part in it because they are receiving these letters. You could have had a John the Baptist or a Jesus that learned about these different cults, or this cult, and eventually became a part of it. And once in it, they may have seen that these men are particularly gifted in the way that they have the oration. They may feel especially called to be the two witnesses or somebody mentioned in the book of Revelation. And they are supposed to go out into the world and create the change. Now, Neil, for you, I have spent some time focusing on the word world, having wondered if there was, let's say this group of churches, this cult, I've often wondered, could they be referring to themselves as the world?
Sure.
You know, and then there's also another world that means everybody else, depending on how the term is used in the Greek when it's written out. Because if God so loved the world that he gave his only begotten son, well, you can sort of toss the Gentiles out. It's really what, like we see in churches today, well, we are a very orthodox group, so we are definitely the ones who are going to be saved, and not that group over there, and not that group over there. We are what, God's chosen people, because we are following the law. We are following what the prophets say. We are following the words of God himself. So I kind of think, in my hypothesis, this is how it began. I do the same thing every time I read the beginning of the Gospel of John. Did you have something? It looked like you were looking something up.
No, I was just looking at the the map of the churches of Asia. Just getting a thing in my, while you were talking about that, just getting my just looking at the map of the churches of Asia and trying to understand. You know, I like to have visuals as I'm thinking.
As do I.
Yeah,
as do I.
But I'm not, and everything you're saying is all possible. I can't really say there's like something I can point to and say, well, that's impossible because of this. It's all possible. I get what you're saying. A lot of these texts are redacted and changed and edited, and they're all most of them are rolling texts. I've had scholars tell me that Luke Acts is probably written in the 2nd century. But this is my thing, and I wonder what you think about this. Because as far as Jesus' historicity goes,
okay,
don't you think? And this is this is sort of how this is why I'm a historicist. The fact that the thing about Jesus and like Paul, Paul's letters, and he doesn't really give us much about the life of Jesus, whatever. That's fine. But like, if this was some made up character, don't you think you'd have like Jews in the Talmud, not even just the Talmud, but like someone like Celsus in the early 2nd century, or don't you think there'd be some sort of hostile sources that are saying there was no guy, they made this up? Because you don't really have that. It seems like everybody even the hostile witnesses, even the people who hate Christianity, they seem to agree that this guy existed.
Well, then where's that same kind of talk about Apollonius of Tyana?
Well, I think he probably existed.
Okay. Well, when you start to read all the miraculous powers Apollonius has...
Well, no, that's a great point.
Might be a head scratcher.
Here's the thing. Apollonius of Tyana is a prime example. But not even just Apollonius of Tyana. You know who Diogenes Laertius is? He wrote a book in the 3rd century called The Lives of the Philosophers, where he writes all these biographies of Socrates, of Empedocles, Parmenides, Plato, Epicurus, and in these stories are just like miracles, and they're talking to demons and they're talking to angels, and it's all just like stuff that obviously didn't happen. And you have that aspect. You have Suetonius writes the life of Augustus. He says at the day he was born, there was a star in the sky that signified a king in the world was going to be born today. And, he was performing miracles, and he revenged the death of Caesar. When Caesar died, he went up into the comet Venus. All these miracles are happening left and right in all these biographies. It seems like that's the way they wrote stories in these time periods.
Sure. I'll agree that there's a certain amount of creative license taken by many of the authors of the ancient world, and we have that going on now, where the person is essentially deifying, if you will, the person that they're writing about. We get it with Elon Musk fans, right?
Exactly.
Like Elon Musk is amazing. He farted and it had healing powers.
Yeah.
This Cybertruck is going to solve all the world's problems and power Miami. There's all sorts of hyperbole built up around a real guy who isn't and probably wouldn't want to be as great as people say he is. Jesus could have been a real guy who was humble and sort of had a little bit of luck with the healing arts because of what he learned maybe when he was a kid in Egypt. That these are real solutions. He had some real solutions to people's problems. And he's like a Jordan Peterson, right? He has a bunch of answers. The answers aren't right for everybody. But to certain people who realize, you know what, I could apply that in my life, and they are indeed helped by it, it's a boon. Well, how hard would it be if that same guy is a con man and he gets a group of 12 other guys, some of who are duped, others who are in on the con?
That's what I'm saying. And
you
have the biography of Alexander the Great, where he goes to Egypt and he goes to the oracle, and the oracle tells him, "You are the son of God. Today you have been begotten by Ammon, and you have prophesied to conquer the world. And as soon as you conquer the world, you're going to die." And then this prophecy happens, and all these miracles, and it seems like, for me, even if the stories of Jesus are 99.9% mythologized, I still think it's likely. I think it's more likely that there probably is a little tiny speck of historical truth buried underneath all that mythology. And for me, it's probably some guy who had a cult following and got crucified, and they're trying to make sense. Why would the Messiah, who we thought them as Messiah, why would he die? Let's figure this out. Let's go back to the Old Testament. They go to Isaiah 53, and look, the suffering Messiah. There we go. That's Jesus. Boom. They apply it on Jesus, and the next thing you know, you got the suffering. The Messiah was supposed to suffer the whole time. That's what I think is most likely. But I'm not even closed off to the fact that, like, people think I'm like anti-mythicist because I made the video about Carrier. No, I actually think mythicism is very plausible, and I think it's definitely 100% possible. My only problem with Carrier was that he portrays the evidence as if it's 100% an undeniable fact that Jesus started off as a myth. Everyone knows this, and it's undeniable, and that there's even evidence of Jesus being an angel in Philo, which isn't true. That was my only problem with it. Other than that, like the angle you're coming at it, I totally think it's possible. 100% possible.
I'll give you a little more. With when John the Baptist is born, let's see. What's that instance? Let's. When John the Baptist was born, his birth was what? Published. They went out and talked about the birth of John the Baptist. Mm-hmm. With Jesus and the wise men, right? We saw his star in the east. So a star is what? An angel. A star is also what? A messenger. Mm-hmm. So it's the person bringing the message. Maybe that's what they saw, and they were in the east, and they came across someone saying, hey, the person who comes before the Messiah has been born. Mm-hmm. And so they figure within a certain amount of time, the Messiah will be too. And if John's family is in this cult, right? Like, who was it? It was also secretly one of Jesus's disciples. Help me out here. Is it?
Wait, which say that
again? Was it Nicodemus? Was Nicodemus?
Oh, yeah. Nicodemus.
Okay, so if you have other people who are like Nicodemus's, and maybe Zechariah, John the Baptist's father, was one of these people, John would have grown up hearing about what this cult thinks that the rest of Judaism doesn't necessarily believe. John would have been brought up thinking this is the time. If Jesus is truly his cousin, chances are his father Joseph would have been on it too. And then what? He would have grown up being indoctrinated with that to a certain degree as well. That's not commenting on Mary or anything like that, whether he's a legitimate child of hers or the Holy Spirit sort of, hey, Mary, what are you doing tonight?
Right.
You know, was his father, if you will. But I think that it's one of those things that, again, when I spell it out more, I'll talk to you about it, because I want to demonstrate just how this could be historical. If I'm not saying it's an angel coming down from heaven with its wings doing the chicken dance for us, but show like, no, this could have been men and women who had the firm belief that all this was unfolding in real time before their very eyes, just as it has been described to them, just as the prophets say it's going to come along, and they're sincere about it, right? I'm trying to give, I guess, out of my disbelief within this hypothesis and theory, I'm trying to give the ancient people, I guess, back their sincerity, which may have been there, right? If they were real people, if Jesus was real, if John was real, then people sincerely believe this as they do today. But back then, they could point and say, he is there. You know, yeah. Which we can't do now. We could say he was there, maybe. And I'm not giving people that much leeway. I'm like, nah, because all the stuff that's supposed to be miraculous and alive today, in action today, you can't prove. I'm supposed to have faith. No.
Yeah, it's almost like it doesn't even matter to Christians today, because his historicity or not, it doesn't matter. They're only thinking about miracles anyway. They're only thinking about, did he resurrect or not?
Well, he's real to them.
Or he's right. It doesn't even matter if he exists or not anymore. So, people might be like, what do you mean it doesn't matter? Because they're beyond that. Christians are beyond if he existed or not. They're on the topic of, did he resurrect or not? So it's almost like it almost doesn't even, I don't know how to say this. It's almost like it doesn't even help to even I like having these conversations. Me and you, we're just having fun talking. Jesus exists or not? Maybe he did, maybe he didn't. But when you're talking to a Christian, it's almost pointless to start off with historicity of Jesus. You're better off granting that he existed.
That's right.
Than dealing with other things, because that's right. The only. You get what I'm saying?
Yeah, I heard this argued that like the historicity thing is such a big deal because it kills Christianity if he wasn't real, but you're just going down something that we can't, you know what I mean? It's a weak way to go. We have so much else on the table. I do want to ask you, where do you think Christians are at overall with the truth? Because I didn't get a straight answer from my mom when I asked her, does it even matter if Christianity is true? Like, do you think the same way they argue past the historicity of Jesus, they'd argue like what matters at this point, right? Like
that's such a good question, because when I talk to someone like John Dominic Crossan or Dale C. Ellison Jr., these are scholars who are Christian, who are not fundamentalists. They're not young earth creationists. They believe in science. They believe in progress. They're probably Democrat voters too. This is mind blowing. And you talk to them, but they believe in Christianity. It's like some like truth about the world that it's almost like a membership that they feel good about. It doesn't even matter if, like, I'll even question them and saying, if Adam and Eve aren't literal human beings that lived 4,000, 6,000 years ago, then why do we need to believe in Jesus if he's not? If there was no sin under the garden, like, why do we need you? And they'll be like, well, I believe it for other reasons. It's more of a, it's like this like deistic approach to Christianity. It doesn't even make sense to me, but they still go with it. I
may be able to give you something about this. So as a child, I was a big fan of pro wrestling, like WWF before it became WWE. And I thought all this was real. The beating each other up and the verbal attacks back and forth. I thought it was real drama unfolding before my eyes.
Yeah.
My brother Rick says, that's fake. How dare you, you heretic? Say it's fake. It is not fake. He goes, oh, yeah? He takes me and my younger brother, who was on my side, it's not fake, to the Fort Wayne Memorial Coliseum to watch the WWF. Sure enough, Hulk Hogan is fighting this guy, swings at him, and doesn't even hit him. And the guy reacts and was like, what?
Wow.
What? And my brother is like, see? And my younger brother, he saw the same thing I did, and we're sitting there like, this is BS.
But did you deconvert that day? Or
I deconverted.
Nice.
What? Because
some people know it's fake, but don't care.
That's me. I love wrestling. That's me. I love wrestling. That's
my perspective.
But wrestling,
isn't it wonderful to belong?
Yeah, but I don't know. It's different. Like,
but that's the thing about these Dale C. Ellison types. So I love these people. They're great people. But do they? And I one day I might have to challenge them on this. Like, don't you know that you're promoting an ideology that is like has its tentacles in people's lives, in our politics and stuff? Like, don't you understand that?
But that's not.
They have to know that.
I'm glad you said that. I typically, in a normal year, not last year, will have dinner with my friend Kelly's family at Christmas time and Thanksgiving. I kind of don't want to be with anybody else at Christmas time and Thanksgiving. I love them. And a retired priest who used to preach at their church that they go to would come over and join us. And I love sitting with him, and we talk a little bit about life stuff, rarely theology, but it could come up. And another guy that comes to dinner there is a neighbor who's also an atheist. So it's a bunch of believers and two atheists, and one of the believers happens to be a priest. And we just enjoy talking about things. And one year we were talking about theology. And I talked about how the Old Testament has these laws that talk about if you're a gay person, you're supposed to be killed, or if you're a non-believer in a town of non-believers, you're supposed to kill all those people if they don't want to convert. And he said something that was beautiful. because I specifically wanted to interview him about what to say. What do believers who are parents or loved ones of a non-believer say to that person when they're told, hey, I no longer believe in the Christian faith?
Right.
Technically, they're supposed to be shunned. And he said it was the way he said it was so beautiful. You know, New Yorker. You can picture John Shelby Spong, very similar looking guy. He goes, the God that I believe in wouldn't say you reject your family member because they no longer believe in God. Now think of the power of that. The God, I can underline it for you, God that I believe in.
It's his own personalized idea of what God is.
It is a personal relationship with Jesus Christ, is it not?
No, that's interesting, but that becomes that's like a private worship thing, right? It's
an a la carte Jesus. It's an a la carte God. Now, I'll take the parts I like. I don't want the custard.
That's interesting, because I've always wondered about what do we do about people who get fulfillment from believing in something, but they don't necessarily, they're not being dogmatic about like the laws. They're not like following some pastor down Plato's cave. They believe, they understand that it's like a self thing. They're projecting their own self up into something higher.
Because
what do we do about that?
Is the self.
Yeah, exactly? What do you do about people who get fulfillment out of believing in something? Do you tell them they're wrong and they should stop? What do you do about that's legitimate?
I think so. I'm at that point. I'm at a point now because look, being in the KKK gives white people hope, meaning, and purpose. Good point. I just don't care anymore. I mean, I think you have thoroughly failed to let me give you an example. Mature. Yeah, give me a good example.
Ocean Keltoy. The YouTuber, have you heard of him?
No.
He's a YouTuber. He's a pagan. I think he's a pantheist. I can't remember what he said he is. He believes in spirits and gods. He's extremely progressive, extremely good dude. I don't have anything I can say about the guy as far as him being like promoting bad ideas. But he believes in God, and he does like what do you do about that type of I honestly, me personally, I don't have a problem with that.
Wait, would you say he's a what?
He's a pagan.
A pagan. Okay,
who cares? What do you get out of knowing him? If he's fun to listen to,
exactly, and has
some point. And has some wonderful perspective on things that you enjoy.
My thing is I'm too hardcore of a scientist. I just don't think woo woo serves humanity anymore. And again, I differ from other people in this.
You know who Vosh is?
I do know who he is. Yeah.
Vosh debated Ocean Keltoy on he said exactly what you just said. I don't care. He said your ideas make people stupid. They make people think that they can pray away something and you don't have to do anything, and there's no science necessary. And so they duked that out in that regard. But yeah, what you're saying is what Vosh was saying.
But I'm recognizing that that's not everybody's there, right? A lot of people have a very your religion needs to be harmful or promoting something they think is wrong. So I get that. This is where me and certain a lot of people in our community part ways, right? Their thing is if your religion doesn't bother me, if you're over there, then it's fine. I just can't go there because that's not how people practice religion. People practice religion in a way where it influences their medical decisions. It influences how they decide who to be with. It influences their choices. And if it didn't influence them that way, they probably wouldn't have it in their lives. So it's just, for me, it's bad epistemology. Although I certainly get that people want to focus on the people they actually think are more harmful.
Yeah, no, that's what I think. That's where the debate's going to be going forward with personal saviors, personal relationships that are not like dogmatic religious, but more of like spiritual side, that's where the conversation is going to be. Like, is your spiritual belief affecting the progress of science, and like, are you going to try to pray that climate change goes away and then not care about actually like doing your part in like, you know, plastics and stuff? That's the type of stuff that I think that is going to be where the discussion is going to be at, because you got to, like, you can't make someone not believe in something they truly believe in. If they believe it, they believe it. There's nothing.
That's right.
You know, it's interesting though. It's one of those gray areas that you don't. It's like, what do you do?
Well, I think you have to call people on their BS, but at the same time, if you love and enjoy people, I guess I like what I do. I'm immensely entertained by people's opinions on faith and religion. And I've been lucky enough to sit in a Sangha with Buddhists and people of other faiths, you know, go to a Jewish temple and stuff like that, and be well received and have a wonderful time. I appreciate those people far more than I do their faith practice. But
right.
those people are often tied to the faith practice and do the best expressing of themselves when they are there because it's safe, right? They know they're going to be accepted.
Yeah, I'm with you. But what I say to people in that state is fine, but to me that epitomizes pathetic. And I'm not saying this, I wouldn't say that to them, right? The person came up to me like this, I wouldn't say you're pathetic because, you know, you need to hold on to your spiritualism to be the best version of yourself tomorrow. But that is what I would feel, honestly. I would feel like, wow, I understand that. You're in a state where you're really lacking tools or resources or support in some kind of way. And it's always like, Neil, I used to say this, I used to say the best argument for Christianity or whatever it was, I would always say sobriety. Sobriety. If you could tell me Jesus is the reason you're sober, right? Again, it's not going to make me believe it, but as far as a good reason for me to let you believe it, sobriety.
Yeah. But the funny thing about what you just said is that if you go to an Alcoholics Anonymous or Narcotics Anonymous meeting, and by the way, these are most cities in America, if you go to jail for a drug offense, they'll let you out early as long as you agree to go to programs. Now, what do these programs entail? Getting a higher power. I'm not kidding. You will be court mandated to believe in a God in America in 2023. It's happening right now. So the idea that like the society is moving past religion is just not true. We still have it. People are mandated to go to programs that say you have to believe in a power greater than yourself to get clean. That's
you do the court system.
Yes.
And but here's the funny part about that. Because me and Derek Bennett had this conversation. We both are people trying to get recovery, and we both don't believe in, you know, we're atheists.
Right.
So how do you do it? Well, you know, whatever. That's a whole other conversation. But the point was, for some people, it actually works. Some people it does help.
Yeah, sure. Yeah.
Do you stop them from getting clean?
I don't.
Okay, so let me give some examples here. I take a bunch of pills so I can stay alive because I like being alive. This pill, it's Synjardy, and what it does is like Pac-Man. My blood sugar gets high. Synjardy helps my system reduce the amount of free glucose, and I pee it out. So my pee is like, I don't know, soda, I guess. It's loaded with sugar. This is furosemide. I actually kind of forget what this does other than it's a diuretic. It does like a second thing. So this helps get the excess water because my heart is weak. It gets the excess water out of my system. So my heart isn't like floating in there. Okay.
Yeah.
All right. So this is Entresto. If I remember what this does, right? This drug, it helps stop my arteries from collapsing. And then I think it's carvedilol. Oh, and it's a beta blocker too, if I remember right. And carvedilol is very similar to that. And I think this helps keep my arteries expanded. This is just a central multivitamin. There's stuff in here that's in there in all of those. And then I take like a couple others that aren't on my desk right now. It may be that comparing these to those programs, in time, I may not need some of these because I will heal. What is broken will heal. That mental disconnect that causes a person to maybe drink too much or take drugs is the same reason I need this one that's like Pac-Man, right?
Sure.
Because I don't automatically behave in a way where I'm clean. I eat so clean I don't have a blood sugar issue. No, I have a freaking blood sugar issue because the Italians made pizza too delicious. Because the French made French fries, because English, it's all foreign food. English muffins, it's all foreign food. But if I could rein in my own behavior, I could let some of these go.
Yeah, I mean, that was for...
So if once the alcoholic, the drug addicted person gets a handle on themselves, they can let go of the God when they realize, like, look, this is 100% your decisions that you're making.
Yeah, and I would be the same way. To whereas if that did get them to sober, and again, you'd have to really know the person, but you would hope a person would then get strong enough at some point so that they're like some of the people we know that have recovered and can move forward without it. One thing I was going to say too is I had to go to court-appointed therapy, and the first place they sent me to was on that religious tip where not only were they trying to tell us, we needed to, all about the higher power and the prayer life, they themselves were like, and we'll call the cop. They like threatened us. It was really bad. But I walked out of that place, and I'm really glad I did, because I found a place that focused on cognitive behavioral therapy. And I feel like that's an example where, if even just going along, like if I would have just said, well, the court says I have to be here, so I'm just going to stay here. I don't believe in this stuff, but I'm just going to deal with it. I feel like I would have never really gotten the help I needed. But to Neil's point, like, yo, what the heck? The courts are putting us in places like there's supposed to be some separation of church and state, and literally the court sends you to a church to get sober. I mean, it's wild.
I think
it is really crazy. It really is.
So it may be that the courts have limited resources
absolutely 100%
for people in those positions. Like, well, we've seen this Alcoholics Anonymous thing work. We've seen Narcotics Anonymous work. And you're not going to learn it in prison. You're not going to reform if we just keep you in jail.
Right. But here's the funny part about that. And somebody might protest and say, but I don't believe in that. Why are you making me do it? And they'll say, okay, your other option, do your time. Nobody's in it. Actually, there are some people that do. That's actually not true. There are people who do choose to do their time. But those are more hardened type people. Yeah. Most people are going to do it. They're just going to, and that against their will, because they want to get out. They're going to do some things and believe in it, pretend to believe in. It's kind of backwards if you think about it. It's kind of, I don't know. I think people are going to look back in the future and be like, that was a weird time.
Well, look, there's probably going to be somebody like me who says, well, I know that the religion part isn't who you are, but the drugs aren't either.
Yeah.
The alcohol isn't either. The pizza isn't either.
Neil, I wanted to ask you about deism, because you and this is the one thing we didn't touch on when I was on your channel, and I wanted to. And also you mentioned how a lot of Christians argue with deistic arguments. So this bothers me from two sides. So number one, what you hit on, they're absolutely always using deistic arguments as though it's going to get us to Jesus. And I find that wholly disingenuous, because I think apologists certainly know better. But the other thing is, are there really deists out there? And again, I know there are statistically people that believe everything, but what I mean by that is I normally find it as a retreat position. A deist is somebody who realized some claim made them throw out the biblical God or the God or whatever holy book they believed in, and then they just held on to the God idea without realizing there was no reason to. So it almost feels like a disingenuous position from the beginning.
There's almost no difference between deism and atheism if you think about it. Because even if there is a power or magical source that's powering this universe, What is that? What's the difference between that and just everything being naturally caused? Everything's just happening one by one cause and effect at a time. Like if this deism thing, whatever we want to call it, let's call it Deus. If Deus is not a theistic God that wants things or talks to people or engages with people, then it doesn't matter anyway. We're all just playing out this reality, and that's it. That's over after that. So it's the same thing as atheism.
Yes. And then also, I always ask the question of, where do you get the idea of a deist God? And it's a book. It's just like, where? Like where?
You know what it is? It's people can't wrap their head around being in this universe and being conscious of the universe, but also being that you can be conscious, but there's not something above you that's also people can't wrap their head around that. It's hard to wrap their head around that because most people are brought up to believe that, like, at a young age, there's heaven and hell, and there's a God that created you, and like that sticks with people so hard that even when they deconvert from Christianity, they still have to think, like this. I'm talking about myself. They still think, well, there's got to be something. I mean, well, come on now. Like that was my thought process for a long time.
Right. You know? Absolutely. And they also. They do that, right? And Assembly of God did make a good point that the Muslims do the same shit, right? Where are you at with Muslim apologetics? Because I often get criticized, like I don't address Islam or Judaism enough. I want to do more with those stuff, but it's not as much in my wheelhouse. But overall, the limited conversations I have had with Muslims on the internet, it's like they're years behind the 8 ball because they're just trying to give me these cleverly masked versions of the, William Lane Craig's cosmological Kalam or whatever, and I'm just like, are you serious, dude? Like,
that's the thing, man. It's because deism is so unfalsifiable. Yes. All you got to do is use deism as a shield and say you can't prove a God didn't create the universe. Therefore, we're going to jump over to my book is true. It's such a weird thing that nobody addresses enough. Like, why do all these different whether it's, let's talk about Muslims for a second, okay? You can't prove that. You can't explain what happened before the Big Bang. Therefore, the Quran is true. Wait a minute. Where do we get to that jump from? How do you get to just throw that in there, tuck that underneath the fact that we don't know what happened before the Big Bang?
Right.
That to me is one of those things that you see with people today.
And then again, they're proposing to know, right? Again, yeah. if you're a deist, you're saying so.
Then why does the Quran say so?
But up the book.
You'll ask them, why does the Quran say that the sun goes underneath the earth? That's not true. If the Quran's wrong about that, it doesn't say anything about the Big Bang. It doesn't say anything about billions of years. Where's all the science at in your Quran? If you don't have it in the Quran, then you don't get to say, because we don't know what happened before the Big Bang, therefore Quran true.
But let's take a compassionate approach.
Do we have to?
No, but I will. You do not. I will. It's more about what the Quran gets right. It's more about what the Bible gets right. It's more about what the Vedas get right. So the solutions that these holy texts provide are far greater than the problems they cannot solve, that they don't solve, that the things they utterly get wrong. Many of these religious adherents feel without their faith practice, the world is going to go to crap. The world is going to fall apart. And that is said or felt or thought without considering all the religious wars that have taken place through time.
Sure.
Because it's not about back then. It's about getting now right. We have to get now right so we actually do have a future. And that's where that frustration comes from.
But do you feel obligated then to make them aware of how religions are contributing to the problems in the world?
I typically do.
Oh, okay.
I have a wonderful time doing it because they can admit it, but typically not in the same sentence. They can't. When you have a discussion that isn't in any way presented as an attack,
Sure.
where it's a constructive discussion where both people or all the people involved are listening and sharing and contributing, then that person can see it your way. They may not even want to, but they can't help themselves. You've essentially, through all the listening you've done and your questions and their questions, you've disarmed them. That part of their brain that shuts down, that won't let them hear you, is disarmed. It's gone.
So Neil, I used to say that we'd have more effective conversations almost if we came at this from former Christians, right? So to my one black friend's point, it's like, I hate the fact that if a Christian says to Christian, man, I'm having some doubts, I took a biology class and, I'm going through the evidence of evolution, whatever it is, or I'm struggling with the question of morality, like whatever it is, if it's another Christian saying it, it's like, oh, well, that's okay, brother. Everybody has their doubts, and they'll make some sort of effort to accommodate you. But it's like, because people engage you as an atheist, there's like an immediate hostility towards what you have to say sometimes, and it's frustrating. Right. I always say you see the atheist in front of you, but you don't see the Christian it took to get here.
Right, and the funny thing is, like, I was even looking at the comments, and I saw someone say something like, well, you guys are like trying to, what do they say? It's something along the lines, you're trying to prove that you're going to go to hell or something. Like, I'm trying to argue that I want this to be true so that we can all go to hell. Like, I want this to be the case. You understand what I'm saying?
Right,
like,
yeah.
They think that like we're doing something that's like, oh yeah, I'm arguing for this because I want hell to be true. I want us all to go to hell.
I don't know if did you see the slavery debate on Derek's channel?
Yeah, a little bit.
To me, that's like, I was late for that too, but it was great. I thought that's what the one side was arguing. It's almost like they're well, you guys are reading into this that the Bible endorses slavery because what do you think we want? Like, we wanted to leave the faith of our parents. They act like there's only two options when these things, like, oh, it's either Jesus is real and we're all gonna get saved by him, or it's just pure atheism and like that's it. Like they can't decide. Like, they can't think of, like, it's only those two choices for them. You understand what I'm saying? Yeah, it's
I don't know. It's weird. It's one of those weird things that I don't understand it, but that's the way they think.
Yeah. Go ahead, my one black friend.
All right. Let's open the scriptures, shall we?
Oh, Lord.
The trouble that a lot of Christians have with slavery and them trying to defend it, again, that's a person trying to redeem God. Because they may find that despicable that there was slavery, that the Bible says, hey, your son's worth twice as much as your daughter. If you're going to sell your kids into slavery, offer all these rules to slavery, how you can beat a kid, how you can trap, or you could buy people around you, from other cultures and make them your slaves. You can give them as property. All of that, to most modern people, is offensive.
Right.
And they don't want to think God can do it. Allow me to give you something. What is it? An aperitif, like this is what you have before you have your meal.
Right.
If that is hard to swallow, here's the only appetizer they need. Okay? Ezekiel chapter 20, 24 to 26. Because they had not executed my judgments, but had despised my statutes and had polluted my Sabbath, and their eyes were after their fathers' idols. Therefore I gave them statutes that were not good, and judgments whereby they should not live. And I polluted them in their own gifts, in that they caused to pass through the fire all who openeth the womb, that I might make them desolate, to end that they might know that I am the Lord. Okay, so
it almost sounds like God saying, I made my people awful just because they had perverted my name, so I made them do terrible shit.
I made them kill
my
their
laws.
kids.
So weird.
I made them kill their kids so they could realize what it's like not to follow me. He made them do it. He gave them laws. What did it say?
Oh my goodness.
Whereby they should not live. So he told them, ladies and gentlemen, if you're talking to a Christian that thinks gays should die and trans people should have no rights, or this person of that color, they shouldn't, or there shouldn't be immigrants in this country, read this to them. Ezekiel 24, chapter 20, 24 to 26. God gave them laws whereby they should not live.
Absolutely.
So he told them to do things they should not do. Well, who's to say that this law that you're trying to enact, get Congress to enact, who's to say that that isn't a law where these people should not live by? Who's to say? What makes you think your God is right? What makes you think your God is moral? Again and again, if we're comparing the Christian morality, the biblical morality to modern day morality, those people had it rough. We have it a heck of a lot easier than they do, because why? We have the benefit of thousands of years of philosophy, political discourse, and watching society improve as we got rid of things like slavery.
Absolutely.
Right?
Absolutely. All right. My one black friend, anything you want to say? Let's wrap it up so we can. Neil, we got to have you on again, man. Thanks so much for coming by. This was super
definitely
fun.
do it agagen soon, for sure.
Yeah, go ahead.
I'll let you know, Neil, when I get this a little more sussed out, my hypothesis and theory. When my hypothesis is more than just a hypothesis, and I can give you a chapter and verse.
I'm down. We can do this on my channel, maybe something.
Yeah,
I'd be happy to.
That'd be great.
I'd be happy to. I'll experiment here first, so all the people can correct me, and I can work on the things that they challenge me on, and get rid of all the garbage ideas and keep the good.
Yeah, that's just, it's fun. I love it.
But yeah, I'm right and everybody else is wrong. Actually, I don't know that yet. I don't know that yet.
Exactly.
I'm sure there's a lot of learning I'm going to do in sorting through this process.
For sure.
Yeah, it's good being back in the saddle, though. I'm happy to be back in the United States. We have a lot of fantastic opportunities here in this country. And you can go some other places where toilet paper is for the guests.
Yeah.
Because it's a luxury item.
Nice.
Neil, I would just say thanks so much for coming, and we'd love to have you back, and love to get your thoughts on more of the sort of political, social stuff going on in this country. Like, quickly, I guess my last question would be, what are your thoughts on Santos, right? Because it feels very cult-like, to where they've all just got to go along with it now. But it's weird. I don't know. Do you does it shock you? Like, right? You're like, I don't know. It's
it
weird.
just shows how the right now, and I'm sorry for anyone watching who leans conservative, but I have to say, like, I got to be real with you. Right now, the party of the rights in this country is completely corrupt. It's just beyond repair at this point. I don't know what to do about it. So,
yeah, I mean, that used to be a party that, like I said, like, there was a time when, if you were remarried, right, you kept yourself out of public life because that was considered enough of a not the right type of family image to have for an elected official, right? Mm-hmm. And now we're at a place where people are lying about Holocaust survival and being in 9/11 and your death of your mother and your.
He's even being called
college.
out by. He's even being called out by what's her name? The girl who was a Democrat that switched over to the Republicans. I can't remember her name.
Kirsten Sinema.
No, that's not her name. What is it? It's Tulsi Gabbard.
No, she went
Gabbard. Tulsi Gabbard. Yeah.
Even Tulsi Gabbard is calling this dude out like, you're a liar. And I'm just like, what is going? This party is about to implode right now.
So one of the stories I just heard recently, on January 5th, 2021, the day before the insurrection, he gave a political rally speech in Dolce & Gabbana, some like fancy luxury scarf, that he had stolen from one of his roommates.
Did I tell
like
you?
His former roommates complained that he stole shit from him, and so then one of them actually noticed he was wearing it. Like the audacity of this.
I was waiting for you to tell me he was wearing a dashiki.
Did I tell you guys? You guys, this is gonna be a whole episode. I can tell you guys a story that my church was so interconnected with the political right. We had a paid bus sent down to our church to take people to DC. For January 6th. It was all planned from the beginning. I knew about the whole time. I have text messages from people saying, get ready for January 6th. We're going to take our country back.
Wow.
That's not a Romans 13 way of Christianity.
I've shown this to people too. People think I'm lying. I can show you.
We gotta have you back on to talk about that. Absolutely.
Yeah, I was in that world, man. That was a real thing happening. It's not. That legitimately was planned out from the beginning to go, and the plan was that Mike Pence was going to follow suit, but he didn't. That's why everyone lost their minds. The plan was they were going to go there, and then Mike Pence was supposed to be the guy, but because of the pressure, he actually did the right thing, though.
He did the right thing,
which is mind blowing.
Hell yeah, that's our follow up episode right there.
Yeah, we'll do that next time.
All right, man. Appreciate you guys so much. In the name of the Darwin, the Dawkins, and the Christopher Hitchens, science bless you all. Poof.
Take care.